With that same, I guess tropical-esque, setup, you've been tracking some of those quick spin-up tornado warnings that have been east of us, way over toward the Raleigh area, but that's very common too with those remnant tropical systems as well, that the drag over land in combination with the wind shear can oftentimes cause those quick spin-ups. We have, of course, we were looking at this earlier, but Aiken, South Carolina, they had a confirmed EF1 that occurred very, very early this morning, and then there's that tornado warning near Raleigh just a little bit ago. Yeah, that Aiken tornado, that was at like 3:50 in the morning, and that was an EF1, high-end EF1, 105-mile-per-hour winds. That was a pretty powerful tornado for this kind of setup. Brittany alluded to the tropical tornado type risk. They're very low top storms, so they're not very tall, and all the shear is happening close to the surface. So it's usually the rotation of the low itself that's causing the issues. And if we're going to see that, there is for us, there's not much of a tornado risk, especially as you get further north and west. But in this area, and then moving into South Carolina, this definitely is an area I would watch. In fact, if I were to highlight an area for the rest of the evening for maybe I call it a 2%, what we call marginal tornado risk. This area right in here is definitely an area I would watch. And then the other area, which we alluded to, is here in eastern North Carolina. Let me turn on the radars over here real quickly, just so you can see those. That would be another area that I think we should watch carefully, because that's getting warm, humid air advected in from the coast. So you kind of see there's a lot going on. I mean, this is the rain I'm talking about. If this was over us, we would have all kinds of problems. We're actually seeing problems with just the scattered stuff, but this is really the fire hose of moisture back to the west. I actually was going to look at the moisture levels with the precipitable water. I'm going to look at that real quickly, bring it up in our system here, because some of these moisture levels are super high. Yeah. To give perspective, like during the summer where we see those heavy pockets of rain, we get a tropical system. PWATs are normally precipitable water values like 2.5 to 3, if not higher. So 2 is really close to that, especially for this time of year. So here's the map. So this is it says atmospheric moisture, but this is essentially precipitable water. It's showing that moisture plume. Look where it's aimed at in eastern North Carolina. So this is why we've kind of lucked out a little bit. This is shifted over here instead of being right here. But when you see that tropical, that is an atmospheric river in the eastern part of the state. So we really did kind of get lucky, and you can see a lot of this moves out tomorrow, and then we see better weather as we go into the middle of the week. And I say better, just lower chances of rain. You're not looking at widespread issues. So quickly, I want to recap the flood watch, because the areas of concern are actually working out exactly where the watch is. This is why these are so effective. Flood watch in effect for the areas with the heaviest rain now. Notice I'll get out of the way. These go all the way back here into the upstate, because this is where that escarpment is, basically where the mountains come right there. And then this area, as Brittany alluded to, they saw so much rain this past weekend, early on and on Sunday into Monday, and then we saw the second wave of rain happening today in the afternoon on Monday. So that area has already been saturated pretty well. So Brittany, we're going to continue to watch this, but I would say heads up for folks in Upper Burke, Caldwell County, as well as eastern Avery, Watauga, and parts of Ashe County. Yeah, and for those areas south of us, down toward Columbia, South Carolina, if you're watching this, you have friends or family in that area, for that low-end chance of a brief spin-up tornado, or even just some really strong gusty winds too. Yeah, and for sure, we'll keep an eye on it. We'll be cutting back into our WCNC Plus stream throughout the evening, every 30 minutes or so. So at 15 after the hour and 15 before the hour. But we're going to go back to the Impact Studio because, hey, it's also draft lottery night for the NBA. And the Hornets have a pretty good chance. One of the 3 teams have a chance to get that #1 pick. And so we're hoping those ping pong balls in the machines will work in our favor. But we're going to have a draft show coming up here in an hour. Brittany and I will hop back in at 7:15 and 7:45 to give you an update on the weather. But let's toss it back over to the Impact Studio.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. And I love your optimism about the Hornets landing that top pick. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the WCNC Live Impact Studio. I'm Nick Carboni, and we are talking NBA Draft Lottery specific to your Charlotte Hornets tonight. The NBA Draft Lottery is about to begin at 7 o'clock from Chicago, Illinois, and we are going to watch with you live, react with you live, and process everything live as it is revealed the top 14 selections in the NBA draft next month in Brooklyn, New York. So the Charlotte Hornets have the highest odds at the top pick, but they are also tied for those odds with the Washington Wizards and Utah Jazz as well. Joining me now, as he did during the NFL draft, is my good buddy and producer, Jeb Goldman, who's wearing a lot of hats tonight. But Jeb, I know you haven't been in Charlotte long, but the optimism tonight is not high that the Hornets will actually be able to pull off this top pick.
I feel like I've been hearing this for years now, that they'll never give the top pick to Charlotte. We wanted Wembanyama. We wanted Zion. I feel like for years people have been thinking it's not going to happen. I think we could change that tonight.
If you weren't an NBA conspiracy theorist before tonight, if the Hornets do not get the number one pick with all this franchise has been through, especially in the lottery, which we will break down, then you may just become one. But let's give folks a quick refresher if they don't know. We hear NBA lottery all the time. Here is actually how it works. This is going to determine the selection for the first 14 picks of the 2025 NBA draft, and the drawings will be conducted to determine the first 4 picks. The remainder of those lottery teams, the teams that didn't make the playoffs, will select in positions 5 through 14 in inverse order of their 2024-25 regular season record. So 14 ping pong balls, Jeb, numbered 1 through 14, are going to go into that lottery machine. There are 1,001 possible combinations when 4 balls are drawn out of 14 without regard to their order of selection. So before the lottery, 1,000 of those 1,001 combinations will be assigned to the 14 participating lottery teams. All 14 balls are placed in the lottery machine. They are mixed for how many seconds? 20 seconds. That's the magic number. The first ball is removed. The remaining balls are mixed in the lottery machine one more time for 10 seconds before the second ball is drawn. There is a 10-second mix, and then the third ball is drawn, another 10-second shuffle, fourth ball is drawn. The team that has been assigned whatever that combination turns out to be of all those mixes and drawings will receive the number one pick, something that has happened to the Charlotte Hornets in the draft lottery exactly one single time in 1991. They actually had 5th best odds before that lottery and came out of it with the top pick, which they used on Larry Johnson, and they hit on that top pick, of course. So we're going to guide you through everything in a few minutes. We are going to have Jalen Gilkey from our news partner WFMY up in Greensboro come on to talk about who else, the prize pick in this whole thing. The guy everybody's got their eye on that will go to whichever team lands the number one pick tonight. That, of course, is Duke freshman phenom Cooper Flagg, set to be the consensus number one pick next month. So who will get him? So Jalen will break that down, as well as the other Duke players that are certain to go in the lottery when the selections are made next month. We will also have a reaction as soon as this thing goes down from Locked On Hornets. Doug Branson is in Chicago, Illinois tonight, and he will provide reaction and a breakdown of, if it's not Cooper Flagg, if it's not number one, where the Hornets go from there. So we're going to try to move on quickly if it doesn't happen, Jeb, and try to tell you who the Hornets may get if it's not Cooper Flagg, although we're retaining a bit of that optimism. Can we bring up the actual lottery odds for the Charlotte Hornets tonight besides number one? If you look on this graphic, they have a 14% chance at number one. But again, they share that chance with Utah and with Washington. Pre-2019, it was the worst record, got the best odds. You got 25% odds, but in order to curtail some tanking in the league, although it's obviously still happening, they made it so the worst 3 teams with the worst 3 records share that 14%. The Hornets have a 13.5% to get number 2, a little over 12.5 to get number 3, 12 to get 4. They're actually an above 50% chance for the Charlotte Hornets to get a top 4 pick in the draft. And there's some really good consolation prizes if that doesn't happen tonight. I think we have the live picture of the Hornets lottery watch party. I know Jeb's got his hands on a lot of buttons. So there it is, Legion Brewing in South Park. We are going to see the reaction when that card comes up, whenever the Hornets card comes up, whether it is number one or otherwise. And man, I'll tell you what, if it is the number one pick, Jeb, the roof may come off.
I was going to say that place goes pretty crazy.
And shout out to their steak salads. They're I'm a big customer there.
No, we love Legion Brewing.
So it's going to be a fun night at Legion Brewing. We'll see what happens with their lottery party tonight. In about 1 minute, again, as I mentioned, we will hear from Jalen Gilkey at WFMY about Cooper Flagg and the rest of the Dukies. But first, I do want to hear a cut of audio from our friends at Locked On Hornets, if we can pull it up. This is how Cooper Flagg would fit, and he fits anywhere, but here's how he would specifically fit with the Charlotte Hornets. Yep, you've got the right one. If you want to give it a play, this is Walker Mail and Doug Branson from Locked On Hornets.
I think they have enough pieces where if they did get Cooper Flagg, it would be meaningful. Like Cooper Flagg wouldn't have to wait on a few more pieces to come and help out. I think LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, if they're healthy enough, that's enough talent to go and make some noise in the Eastern Conference alongside what we all think Cooper Flagg is going to be. You speak about the ownership group, and I think the Mark Williams trade actually signals that the Hornets deserve this even more because they're willing to make the difficult decision to trade someone that they have declared was part of their core four. And so you want your organization to be able to make those difficult decisions if you're going to bring someone of Cooper Flagg's talent and try to win as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, Cooper Flagg fits anywhere, right? And if you're the Charlotte Hornets, you are going to make room for him in that starting lineup right away. He's the one player in this draft that you basically hand the keys to the franchise. And I know LaMelo Ball is there, Brandon Miller is there, but Cooper Flagg is that type of player, dynamic at every level of the floor, scoring, and he would immediately become, at least from what we saw in college at Duke, the best defender, individual defensive player on the Charlotte Hornets as well. With that length, he can defend multiple positions and with his athleticism as well. So, all right, listen, we've had some lottery losses in Charlotte, and I know we don't want to revisit those, but let's take a look at some of the lottery losses for the Charlotte Hornets over the years. Last year they had the third, I think, it was third best odds to land the number one pick, and they went backwards, getting the 6th overall pick. Zachary Richichet, we'll see how he winds up. He was the first pick, and we will see how Tijon Salon, the 6th pick that the Hornets ended up selecting, winds up as well. In 2013, they had the second best odds. It went to 4th. They picked up Cody Zeller, really solid guy, good player here for a long time, but in that draft, they could have had Victor Oladipo, who was probably a touch better, and a whole lot of teams missed on Giannis Antetokounmpo in that draft as well. So I'm not really sure how much the lottery had anything to do with that. You go back to, and I don't list this one, 2023, because the Hornets actually didn't have great odds to land the top pick. They had the 4th best, and they moved up to number 2. We thought for a second watching that lottery that they were going to get the number 1 pick, and Victor Wembanyama, generational talent. The Spurs get him. Hornets still think they got a good one with Brandon Miller. But yeah, you look there, 2012, that's the big one. Had the top odds, did the Charlotte Bobcats. They don't get it. They get second. The New Orleans Hornets, to add insult to injury, pouring salt in that open wound, land Anthony Davis, who obviously has had a fantastic career in the NBA. The Hornets get Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, number 2 overall. Hard to nitpick it now. He was a really explosive athlete coming out of a really good Kentucky roster that included Davis. He just did not pan out here in the NBA. You go back to 2005. Hornets had 3rd best odds going into that lottery. They ended up 5th. They picked Raymond Felton. Chris Paul was the pick before Raymond Felton. So that hurts, especially with a local guy there. And you go back to 1989. Hornets again had 2nd best odds. They get 5th. J.R. Reed, not bad. Could have had Glenn Rice. Miami got him, and then they got Glenn Rice later in his career, and he was an all-star here as well. They've had some wins too. 1991 is when they had the top pick. They were 5th going in, and they moved up to number 1, and they picked Grandmama Larry Johnson. So got to be happy with that. Do we have Jalen yet? Jeb, just checking.
We're working on it.
We're working on Jalen Gilkey to talk about some of the Duke players. If we can, and I know you're doing a lot, let's hear from the Locked On crew because a lot of Hornets fans feel like the NBA is against them in this process as we're 8.5 minutes from this thing. And these guys say, yeah, like Charlotte deserves some luck right now in this lottery. Take it away, Doug and Walker.
It's not that they need this. They obviously need this. To me, it's that they deserve this. Because you mentioned it, 1991. That's the last time the Charlotte Hornets have gotten the number 1 overall selection, gotten lucky in the lottery. Followed that up by getting even luckier, moving up more spots to number 2 to get Alonzo Mourning in 92. But they haven't had much lottery luck since then.
Let's talk about the deserve part, because I think Hornets fans have deserved this as much as any fan base forever, right? Hornets fans have deserved this forever, having helped the Hornets lead the league in attendance for so long until it took among the worst owners of all time. If you don't believe me, just ask the hierarchy in the Ringer ranking. That all three of them showed up. All of them. So the only ones not on that pyramid of pain is the current ownership, the current regime. So anyways, Hornets fans have deserved this the entire time. But it's an interesting question, right? Do the Hornets deserve it? Because I think you could argue for a long time the Hornets didn't deserve it, right? The Hornets took their organization away, and then they went to the Pelicans. They went to New Orleans, I should say, and then the Pelicans, also a team that has received the number 1 overall pick a couple of times. That franchise has, and they've never been to a conference finals either. So that's something where we had our team taken away. But also, 3 different owners have shown up in terms of the worst owners in NBA history. Right. So they don't deserve it. I do think this is the year where you could argue they do, right? So the pitch for that, the Hornets organization deserves it, right? It's that they finally picked a lane. It feels like they've been doing things the right way. They have talent that they didn't just ship off. Like, they definitely tried to tank this year for sure. I mean, there was some egregious parts to tanking, but also not nearly as egregious as what you would see from Toronto that would just sit their starters in the second half of winning time. It wasn't nearly as egregious. And they didn't trade away LaMelo for all the picks. They didn't trade away Brandon for all the picks. They traded away Mark, but also, like, that was unsure. We were unsure how much of that was tanking. It just felt right. It felt like they wanted to move on to some degree, and that was great value. And then they couldn't even get that done because the Lakers decided that they didn't want to get that done anymore. I think this is the first time in a while, Doug, where you have a legitimate case that the franchise, not the fan base. The fan base has deserved a number 1 overall pick ever since that the fan base has been in existence. But the franchise, it's the first time in a while, in my opinion, that you could argue the guys over there at Spectrum Center deserve.
I tend to agree with the guys from Locked On Hornets there. You know, a lot of iterations of this franchise, the team itself did not deserve number 1. The fans have always deserved number 1. And if they get number 1, they're going Cooper Flagg. So to talk about Cooper is a guy who watched all of his games and attended many of them this year, Jalen Gilkey from WFMY in Greensboro. Jalen, we know he's the consensus top pick. What about Cooper Flagg's game do you think that was so successful in 1 year of college as the youngest player in college basketball translates immediately to the NBA?
Well, I think just the overall effort and energy and basketball IQ that he has. He plays with those 3 things, and it doesn't matter how his game is actually flowing, especially on the offensive end. The effort, the energy, as well as the basketball IQ are 3 things that never dissipate while Cooper Flagg is on the floor. And I think that's the number 1 thing that he could bring to the Charlotte Hornets and really inject some life into this franchise, because it seems like over the last few years, it's looked like they've lacked effort, they've lacked energy, especially once you get to about December and they're looking up at the standings and they're 20, 25 games out of first place or just even in contention. As the seasons continue to wane on and as the year continues to go on and the losses start to stack up, you'll be able to see there's a little bit of quit in this Charlotte Hornets franchise, and I think that's something that Cooper Flagg will be able to remedy, just because of his love for the game, his drive and tenacity just to be great, to be one of the greatest of all time. That's what he wants to do. It's clear when you speak to the young man, whether it be in the locker room setting or if you just catch him by himself, it's clear that his goal is to be great. He wants to have an unbelievable impact. He wants to have his hands in kind of every area of the game, whether it be defensively, offensively, creating for other players, being a team guy, energy guy, a leader. All of those things is what you can all those boxes are checked when you select Cooper Flagg and bring him into your franchise. So I think it's exactly what the Charlotte Hornets need, that shot in the arm to revitalize this franchise and to bring them back from obscurity. It's I think it's a great fit. Of course, he's already familiar with the Carolinas. His family lives out here in the Greensboro area right now as his brother gets ready to graduate high school from Greensboro Day. It's just, I think it's a perfect fit. He's also kind of in that 3-4 position where he could be able to be on the floor with LaMelo, Bridges, Brandon Miller. He could be that fourth guy in the lineup of 5 with Mark Williams as well. So his versatility is through the roof. his shot making, shot selection through the roof, his overall skill of just knowing where to be and how to just be ready and prepared for whatever the moment has for him. I know a lot of people say, he came up small in a couple moments at the end of the year for Duke or when it was crunch time for Duke. But, I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of moments where the team came up short, not just Cooper Flagg. And he put himself in a lot of great opportunities to lead and to take them to the national championship, and I think he could help turn things around in Charlotte.
All right, Jalen, well said, man. A guy who saw Cooper Flagg all year long as the best and youngest player in college basketball. And thanks for helping us dream a little bit, man. Hopefully in a few minutes we have good news, and we're going to come back to you later in the show either way to talk about Cooper and some of the other Duke guys that should be lottery picks and their potential landing spots. So Jalen Gilkey from Greensboro at FMY, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before they start flipping these cards, it's wet out. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but we've got Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich in our studio tonight. He's going to hit us a couple times with what today was like and what we can expect the rest of the week. Brad, selfishly, I'd like to stay dry down at Quail Hollow Club this week. So what do we got?
It was rough today. I mean, I think last check, right around the course there, South Mike High School, 2 inches of rain.
Wow.
So
right there, yeah.
Soaked today. Now, the bad news is we still have a lot of rain out there tonight. It's not so much in the Charlotte metro, but it's more so in the mountains and foothills. So the two areas we're watching right now, Upper Burke and Caldwell counties, those areas have seen almost 4.5, 5 inches of rain tonight. So we're seeing some heavy rain into Watauga County. The Watauga River up near Bosco is at 9.5 feet, so it's been coming up. So that's really the focus, the mountains and foothills. The rest of the area is just kind of soggy right now, and so good night to watch the draft here in the Piedmont and some mountains that we're really worried about right now.
Yeah, and rest of the week, I mean, if you're trying to go to sticking to sports as a sports guy, if you have passes to go out, you're probably going to be seeing a little bit of rain no matter what.
There's not a day where I would say there's a 0% chance. The thing that happens later this week is we get more into that summer pattern where it's hazy, hot, and humid, and you get a pop-up afternoon storm. So that means the mornings and the early afternoons are probably going to be fine. Our threat level is going to be in the evening. So if you're going out there, bring the golf umbrella or the poncho for sure.
All right, Brad Panovich, you'll be back at 7:45. Yep. Hopefully we'll be celebrating and have some confetti going off.
Flag, come on, man.
All right, first card is off the board. San Antonio Spurs getting pick 14, and we are off. The Hawks will receive pick 13 in the NBA draft lottery as Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum taking his spot at the podium. Of course, Adam Silver will do the honors at the draft, but this is Tatum's show. We've got the Bulls at number 12 as they are flying through these, so the anticipation is building. Portland Trail Blazers at number 11. Now, where we want to pay attention really is about 6 or 7 to see where the Hornets land in that range. And again, over 52% chance at a top 4 selection. Houston Rockets are number 10. And we go into the top 10. No matter how many times we come up short here in Charlotte, this is always a highly anticipated moment. The Toronto Raptors at 9. So that's the top 9 here. And we go to 8. By the way, Charles Lee, Hornets head coach, will be the Hornets representative here. Nets are number 8. So here we go. We are watching for the Charlotte Hornets now to see where they will select in the 2025 NBA draft. Pelicans number 7. So we're now into the top 6. Zion Williamson there for the Pelicans tonight. Maybe they'll trade him while he's there. I don't know. Washington Wizards get the 6th pick. Huge for the Hornets. That was one of the 2 teams they were sharing the best odds with. So now we move to the top 5. Jared McCain from Duke representing the Philadelphia 76ers. They just showed him on the screen. My heart is pounding. And I know Hornets fans' hearts are pounding. There's a shot of Cooper Flagg. The cards come in. The Utah Jazz. So the 2 teams the Hornets shared a 14% chance at number 1 with are already off the board. The Wizards at 6, the Jazz at 5. It is down to Charlotte, Philadelphia, San Antonio, and Dallas. This is usually where they take a commercial break, and it kills me, so I'm not sure that's what they're going to do, but we'll ride with you the whole way. Man, this is brutal. This is brutal, but it's a good position to be in. Maybe we'll want to get that shot of the South Park Legion Brewing up because I think fans there are really excited right now. I saw some applause going on. as Jeb keeps you posted with who is getting which pick. But, man, this is you see the hands on the head, like they didn't come off the board early. The two teams they split 14% with are out. Oh, man. This is crazy. So it would be, I don't even want to say it. There's a lot of things I don't want to say. It's kind of like when a pitcher is working on a no-hitter or perfect game. Don't want to say it right now. But certainly this bodes well for the Hornets. They had an over 50% chance to land a top 4 pick. They will indeed land a top 4 pick. The question now is, will they get the number 1 pick in the NBA draft and the right to select fabulous Duke freshman Cooper Flagg? Jeb, this is your first rodeo with a Charlotte lottery, isn't it?
It is. I've watched the disappointment in the franchise for years. Now we get to hopefully not live it.
Yeah, so let me look up some of the draft lottery odds per team to see what we're up against now.
And while you're doing that,
other teams.
I predicted before this that the 76ers would have the first pick. I've said that I was very,
Jeb. I hope you are wrong.
I hope I'm wrong, too.
The 76ers have a 10.5% chance. New Orleans also had a 12.5% chance. They went off the board early. Brooklyn and Toronto had decent chances.
Yeah.
So
I can't believe
Dallas has a less than 2% chance.
That's crazy.
Philadelphia, as I said, 10.5. Charlotte, the best odds remaining at 14%. And help me out, who was the 4th team still involved?
It was Dallas, Sixers. Is it are the Pelicans still in there?
No, the Pelicans.
Right, I thought.
Are the Pelicans off the board, or I just see Zion? Let's see. But anyway, Hornets have the top remaining odds for this thing. We see Hugo the Hornet getting ready for the reaction. I saw Muggsy Bogues in the house earlier. I know that some of the Hornets' top brass is at Legion Brewing in South Park. A great crowd there. Will they erupt for the number 1 pick? We will find out in mere moments, as this thing is now down to the top 4. I have a list of maybe the top 12 prospects, Jeb.
Oh, yeah.
We will hopefully throw that away and talk about
we
Cooper
only care about
Flagg
one guy
in the next 10 minutes. They do love to make a show of this in Chicago. They go to break when the top 4 are remaining. Listen, just at the end of the day, top 4 is going to be a really good spot to be for the Hornets in this draft. I think there's some fallout after 4, but top 4, listen, you'll be disappointed if it's not number 1, but there are some really good players.
Right. Cooper Flagg is a generational talent, but at the end of the day, if you look at Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, even Trey Johnson, this is a stacked draft class. So to be in that top 4, I think no matter what, the Hornets are getting a lot better.
And I hope we don't have to talk about any of those guys after 7:30, but we will indeed discuss them and break them down if this happens. But, I think you ought to be happy right now with the fact that you are guaranteed a top 4 selection.
Danielle Stein just texted me, Spurs are the other team in the top 4.
Oh, they have another pick? Okay, that's right.
Which is absolutely
okay. Yeah, which would be ridiculous. Yeah. They have a 6% chance at number 1. If the Spurs get this pick, the clamoring of conspiracy theories against the NBA from the Charlotte region is going to be through the roof.
Unreal.
Yeah, and we will talk about that with Doug Branson from Chicago when he joins us from the NBA draft lottery. If the Hornets do not get this pick, it is a fair system based on math, but it has done some very unfair things to Charlotte Hornets fans and Bobcats fans over the years, specifically over the last 15 years. So, all right. So, seeing Utah and Washington come off the board in succession is where I saw the crowd at Legion Brewing start to go a little crazy.
Right, they're paying attention.
And I will say that 2 years ago, we did not expect the Hornets, I think, had the 4th or 5th best odds going in, and it was down to they were in the final draw. But they did not get it. So I'm feeling kind of the same way, and I know Hornets fans are too, and I know Cooper Flagg is too. He's sitting next to his Duke teammate, Con Knippel, at the draft lottery party in Chicago, Illinois. The Sixers table made up of their brass, including former Dookie Elton Brand. Of course, they would love him too. Dallas, you talk about karma and who deserves it. The Dallas Mavericks do not deserve the number 1 overall pick after what they pulled this summer. So here's another one. If it's either of the Texas teams, I think the Hornets fans have a gripe with the NBA. So Tatum is back out onto the podium, and we're going to find out very shortly the Charlotte Hornets 2025 NBA draft fate. Pick number 4 will go to the Charlotte Hornets. A gut punch as we look at Legion Brewing in South Park. You get a top 4 pick, but it is not number 1. It is not Cooper Flagg. The Charlotte Hornets lottery luck and lottery heartbreak continues in 2025.
Let's listen into what the live reaction from the fans right now.
Yeah, the Hornets lottery heartbreak continues here in 2025. Del Curry, I see, reacting with Paul Biancardi in the center of your screen. We saw Muggsy Bogues earlier. Listen, this is a top 4 pick that's nothing to sneeze at, right? But everybody thought this was the year. Number 1 pick. They had the top odds tied with Utah and Washington. Utah and Washington go off the board prior to the top 4. The anticipation before this happening, you thought this was the year. Instead, it goes to the Dallas Mavericks, who, man, you talk about lottery luck. They trade Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis this summer, an incredibly controversial trade. And, man, that's tough stuff. So we've got the live reaction, or now really non-reaction, from Legion Brewing in South Park. Hornets once again. No luck in the NBA draft lottery.
I can't believe it.
So let's see. We got pick 4. Okay, so why don't we open up the scouting reports and see who that could be? You're probably out of range for Rutgers' Dylan Harper. He's probably going 2 or 3. The first guy that comes to mind for me right off the bat, if Ace Bailey from Rutgers is not available, is VJ Edgecombe, the big forward, the wing from Baylor, 6'5", who, we talked about the defensive intensity Cooper Flagg would bring to the Hornets immediately. VJ Edgecombe brings that part. He doesn't bring the other parts of Cooper Flagg's game, but he brings the length, he brings the defensive intensity and want to that, quite frankly, a lot of Charlotte Hornets veterans are going to have as well. As we hear Cooper Flagg, basically all but flying to, booking or renting homes in Dallas already at this point. But Cooper Flagg to the Dallas Mavericks, not what I expected tonight for sure. The Mavericks came into tonight with less than 2% odds. They had a 77.6% chance at pick 11.
Has this ever happened?
That's a long way to go.
This is crazy.
That is a long way to go. So that's 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's a heck of a long way to go for the Dallas Mavericks. So when we do have Doug Branson on, and I don't know if you're communicating with him or I should, but so I know Doug had some responsibilities right before he comes on with us, but he's going to break this down with us as soon as he can. When we have Doug on, we got to talk about this. I mean, this is, starting to feel real for Hornets fans that the league just doesn't want them to get that top pick, doesn't want them to win the lottery. And while I think that is, a little bit too much, it certainly has to feel like that at this point, right?
You've got to start, and I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but Dallas, which is a massive NBA market, loses their star, so they just give them a brand new one. I mean,
you're starting to convince me, Jeb.
It's ridiculous.
You are starting to convince me.
Those Dallas fans who wanted nothing but Nico Harrison to be gone,
and now Nico gets that second chance.
I was going to say that's a layup.
Really tough stuff for Hornets fans tonight. Although we're going to break down what some of their options could and should be at number 4 in the NBA
I really
draft.
want to hit this home for Hornets. Yes, it's a bummer we did not get Cooper Flagg. That guy is an all-star in the making, going to be amazing.
It's more than a bummer.
Yeah, it's more than a bummer. It's more, but man, I'm telling you, I think there's some real talent. And you think about it, we've got 3, 4 really talented guys on the floor right now. I think this could be the missing spot.
Considering health, yes.
So I think this could be a really, really exciting time for the Hornets. I think fans have plenty to be celebrating.
All right, 4th overall picks in Hornets history, 2013, Cody Zeller. We discussed that earlier. Solid player for a really long time with Charlotte and in the NBA. Great guy for the community. I believe that is the only time they've ever picked 4th. Now, at number 2, 2 years ago, they picked up Brandon Miller. At number 3, 5 years ago, they got LaMelo Ball. So certainly in range at top 4 of a really good basketball player that you want to come in and make an impact right now. And the other thing I'll say about this draft, Jeb, compared to last year's draft, when half of the first 12 picks in last year's draft were teenagers from France. So the league knew virtually nothing about any of these players, especially the one the Hornets took a chance on at number 6 in Tijon Salon. The difference in this draft is you're looking at the list, and if you watch any college basketball, you know who these players are. Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, some of the Duke guys, Con Knipple. I'll ask Doug if he thinks, they lost out on Austin Reeves because of the Mark Williams trade fiasco. I mean, is that too high for Con Knipple and all that he brings defensively, shooting, all things they need? He's also long and has good leadership traits for such a young kid. You talked about the kid from Texas. There's a kid from South Carolina, Colin Murray Boyles. I think it's probably you're out of range for those. So it looks like we are going to get Jalen Gilkey back from WFMY. Yep. Is that something we're going to do soon, or
very soon? Yep, he's coming in right now.
Yeah, we've got our guy Carey interviewing some Hornets fans about the reaction. If we want to pull that up.
Yeah, here, let's go to that.
The one to jump Utah, to jump Washington, and then to be jumped by Dallas just really hurts after all they've done.
Of course, yeah, gutted that we didn't get the number 1 spot, but still, I don't want to take away anything from the 4th pick. Of course, still excited for whoever's going to come to the team, but yeah, still kind of, sad deep inside that we didn't get the 1st pick. But again, don't want to take anything from the 4th pick. Excited for him.
I mean, it's disappointing, but I mean, the past is in the past. We got to look past it. We still got hope for the future. I mean, we got Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball. I mean, we got good players. We just got to move on from this, get the great player in the number 4 spot, and move on.
If there was anything you would see different within the franchise, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful with the new ownership. I think I've been a lifelong Hornets fan, season ticket member, and I've just been fresh.
All right, our guy Carey Corley out there holding it down at the South Park Legion Brewing NBA lottery party for the Charlotte Hornets. And, listen, punch in the gut, but then, hey, we got a top 4 pick. So Jalen Gilkey's rejoining us from WFMY in Greensboro. Jalen, that gut punch, is going to last a little bit. What did you think when you saw Washington and Utah come off the board, boom, boom, before the top 4? It just felt like everybody their heart rate elevated a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, Nick. When I saw Washington and Utah come off the board and we're on the outside looking in at the top 4, I said, this is going to be the year for the Hornets. Everything lines up perfect. We got the kid from Duke sitting in the top spot on pretty much everybody's draft boards. Then we get the Hornets with the number 1 pick. Is meant to be. And then, the other shoe falls. And now we're looking at probably the craziest story of the week in sports is the Dallas Mavericks getting the number 1 pick.
That's crazy. That's not right. It isn't right. I mean, as somebody who follows the NBA, seeing Dallas with all they did to themselves, self-inflicted this summer or this season, get the number 1 pick from where they were slated to be. I mean, how does that hit you?
I mean, honestly, I was kind of a contrarian in this whole Luka Doncic trade situation. I've always kind of looked at him as of course, a great player, a guy that can do otherworldly things with the basketball, but I never really saw him as a guy that really put together a winning product on the floor, just because of whether it be lack of effort on defense, whether it be physical shape, whatever you want to call it. I just never thought that to me, when I watch Luka Doncic play, it doesn't ever really look like he wants to do everything that's necessary to win, especially in the playoffs as it gets later in the season. You get into May, you get into June. So I wasn't as opposed to the trade from the Dallas side. I've always loved the game AD brings as long as he's available on the floor. And now that they can add Cooper Flagg to a lineup that could potentially have Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, now Cooper Flagg in there as a big 3, whether it be 2026 25-26 season or 26-27 season, I think things are looking up in Dallas, and maybe we can relieve some of those officers that are outside of Nico Harrison's night his house every night due to all the crazy fans down there.
Yeah, that's too much. That's too much. But, I definitely hear what you're saying about Luka and the deal they made. It may end up, I think it was what they got back and how that all played out. But, all right, so not going to be Cooper.
Just real quick.
Go ahead.
I'll think about it, right? So Lakers get bounced first round of playoffs, and then Nico wins this. So it's like, I don't know where you stand on it, but he kind of looks like a fortune teller here, like like he can see into the future. Maybe he's a psychic. I don't know what's going on, but crazy night in NBA with what we just saw happen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so it's not going to be Cooper. You broke him down wonderfully, and I maybe we can send that to our Dallas affiliate now that he's going there. But let's talk about a couple of the other Duke guys that should go in the lottery. I'm going to ask some people, like, is 4 too early for Con Knipple? What do you think of Con Knipple's game as it translates to the league?
I really like a lot of the aspects to Con Knipple's game. I love the way he handles the ball. I love the way he's not afraid to get to the rack. Of course, how he shoots the ball. That's going to be probably his number one tool when he gets to the NBA. But he has a very high level of competition that he plays with. You get out there and you can tell if a guy scores on him, it bothers him, right? And that's something that you look for. You want somebody that can compete and wants to be out there and wants to not only fill it up, but also stop their man from putting the ball in the basket to help their team win. 4, would I say Knipple is the 4th pick of this year's draft? Not 100% sure on that, just because of he did show us that he could carry the Duke program when Cooper went down with the ankle injury. But I think those kind of top 4 spots, especially in this draft, I think those are for guys that are true franchise changers and not good pieces to your rotation. Like, I think Con Knipple could be a great piece, a good piece, a fringe all-star piece to a rotation. Now, I don't think he's a franchise changer with his skill set right now, just because I don't know if he has the athleticism to be able to get to the bucket as free as he was when he was in college. I think that's going to be kind of the number one thing. And of course, they say as the levels continue to rise and the competition gets better, the speed of the game is what really changes, and not necessarily the skill set of the guys on the floor. But that speed is I think is going to affect his ability to get to the rim. My player comp for Con Knipple right now is Grayson Allen.
Okay.
Like, he's a competitor.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he'll get out there, he'll get scrappy with you, he's going to elbow you, he's going to be physical, he's going to be tough with you, he's going to knock down those 3 balls. But his play at the NBA is going to probably, his impact at the NBA is probably going to take a step back from what it was at the college level. But still, Grayson Allen just a couple years ago led the association in 3-point percentage. So I think, a very useful player that got a whole bunch of money. So I think there's a bright future ahead for Con Knipple, but I just don't know if he's better than Flagg, Harper, Bailey, or even Trey Johnson from Texas. So
yeah, I mean, you think of Con Knipple, you think probably going to have a long career, maybe play for a few contending teams and hit some big shots in the playoffs. Maybe not the guy to help lift the Charlotte Hornets off the ground, although I'd love whoever they get to have that mentality that you talked about. So I know we didn't prep, I didn't say we were going to ask you this, but you watch college basketball, you already know these names. Like, is there a guy that jumps out to you at 4, like, that you would be really excited about for the Hornets?
For the Hornets. Well, now, because with Cooper Flagg kind of being the outlier, this is after Flagg, it's pretty guard heavy, right? And so that's a position that Hornets already kind of have some depth at, whether it be Brandon Miller, whether it be LaMelo Ball, or whether it be Miles Bridges, right? So those guys that are kind of already solidified in the rotation for Charlotte. So now it's looking at adding a 4th guard to that rotation, maybe the first guy off the bench type piece. If I'm Charlotte, and I kind of feel like he's going to be there at 4, I love Trey Johnson, especially the way he turned in the second half of the year, guard out of Texas. I mean, unbelievable bucket getter.
Yep.
Like, he fills it up. Now, the most talented guy, or probably the biggest guy that could probably have the most instant impact, could be Ace Bailey, just because of the wow factor that he brings with the tough shot making and tough shots that he takes. But that's a double-edged sword, right? He's going to make some tough shots, but he'll shoot some shots you're going to be like, wow, don't know if that was the right option. And I think the Hornets already have a guy that kind of falls into that tendency and pattern already. So I don't know if adding another questionable shot taker to the rotation or to the team is exactly what Charlotte's going to be looking to do. But I think the guy right now, certified bucket getter, Trey Johnson, probably going to have to work on, staying in front of his man and maybe have to work on just the effort that he gives out there on the defensive end. I mean, he's going to come in and not be the guy. So that always helps when you come in and you're not the guy. So you got to kind of find a way to make sure you're in the rotation, make sure you're on the floor and playing defenses where you could kind of shine and stand out from the rest of the guys at your position. But I think Trey Johnson is probably the guy that we're targeting right now for the Charlotte Hornets at number 4.
Yeah, it's the kind of pick that when you put it out there, they say Jalen knows ball. So he's a guy that may not be top 5 in the mocks, but he's a guy that if you watch Texas at all this year, you watch him offensively, like you said, a guy should translate that offensive game to the league pretty quickly. All right, before we let you go, Kamen Malawach, obviously he's in the mix for being a lottery pick. I mean, when he was on for Duke last year, man, offensively and defensively, it's just a question of whether he can put both together at the NBA level. But I think he at least brings rim protection at 7'2" to whatever team's going to grab him this year. What do you think of Kamen?
Man, I love everything about Malawach's game. The one thing that I would critique is just the strength that he possesses physically. Yep. A lot of times, some of those more rough and rugged teams, i.e. Houston, i.e. Arizona, they were kind of able to knock him off his spot and move him from where he wanted to be, kind of eliminate him from the boards. As we saw in the semifinal game, we had 0 rebounds against Houston. He just was out-physicaled and out-tucked. So that's, of course, the number one thing he's going to have to work on, and I don't know how you work on that per se, but that's where he needs to improve the most. But his ceiling is possibly one of the highest of all the guys in the draft just because of the frame, 7'2", super long wingspan, great touch around the rim, familiar with spacing and comfortable in space on the floor. Also showed the ability to stretch the floor out a little bit. Really started to knock down that 3 ball with a decent amount of confidence as the season went on, especially in some big moments. So to be able to do those things and to be a 3-level scorer, pretty good free throw stroke, that's always kind of your number one telltale sign as to how you're going to shoot the ball is how you shoot the ball from the field is how you shoot the ball from the free throw line. So I'm very optimistic about Malawach's abilities and what he could be at the NBA level, and I can't wait to see what he develops into as long as he gets the right fit. Maybe hopefully he can get to a place that has a history of a couple big men that were successful, and he can kind of work with those guys and try to figure out a way to be able to load a little bit, bear a little bit more of a load when it comes to minutes as well as just physicality out there and really commanding the defense as that number one defensive anchor.
All right, Jalen Gilkey from WFMY. Thanks again, man, breaking down all the Duke guys, the Hornets lottery, lack of luck, and also some of these other guys that they could grab. So, man, I appreciate you. We could have manifested. We couldn't manifest it this time around.
Dude, I mean, like, every year. It's heartbreaking, man. It really
is. It's crazy. I feel bad for Hornets fans. All right, we're going to turn now back to weather with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here in the Live Impact News Studio. Brad, first I got to get your thoughts on the lottery because I know you've been
totally
around.
Rigged, Nick. It's totally rigged.
But you can start really asking that question at this point. Dallas?
Mathematically, that should not happen.
Less than 2% chance at the number one pick, and they get it.
Oh, man, I don't know. Even as a Hornets fan, Utah probably shouldn't. I mean, they tanked. The 76ers probably should.
Yeah, even Toronto was tanking.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way Dallas should get that.
No, I mean, here we go. Cooper Flagg goes to one of the top markets who have no problem attracting
and he
players
just happens
in the first
to be there on. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we got some strong storms coming through tonight. So, what can you tell us?
Yeah. So, the update on the weather-wise, there is still scatter showers here, but we did have a little update from the last time I was in here. We do now have a flood warning for parts of Watauga County. So, this scenario I was watching earlier, the southwestern part of the county near Fosco. This is along the Watauga River near Sugar Grove. That water's come up about 9 feet in the last 12 hours or so. And so parts of Watauga County, we're seeing flooding. Now, it's mostly low water crossings in that area, so don't try to cross on some of these lower water crossing bridges and even drive-through areas. They're inundated with water right now. The other part we're watching is Upper Burke County near the Linville Gorge. I had some pictures sent in to me of some flooding around Linville. So don't be surprised if this continues, because I'm going to widen this out. And you can see there's still a lot of rain that has to move through. And then we're keeping an eye on a couple storms coming up through the upstate. It's still outside of our area, but just moving into South Carolina, just crossed the Savannah River there. We do have a tornado warning now near Abbeville, which is basically near the Georgia line, state line. So that little line we'll have to watch. So for the viewers that are watching us in the upstate of South Carolina, you might have an isolated tornado risk. But the flood risk ongoing in the mountains, that's till 4:15 in the morning, by the way, flood warning for Watauga County. So we'll keep a close eye on that for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, Brad, even this weekend, I started to see some pooling on the highways.
Yeah.
And those things, they're deeper than you imagine when you approach them. So
Well,
you gotta
we
be
hadn't
careful.
had rain in a while, and so what happened, the debris built up, and so a lot of storm drains are getting clogged. So yeah, watch out in the roadways. There are a lot of standing water, especially on that right lane and left lane and on the interstates.
All right, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here in the Live Impact News Studio. I know you and Brittany Van Voorhees will be keeping us posted tonight on WCNC Charlotte at 11 as this weather moves through. Thanks, man. And your team's in the playoffs, so you're fine. But I know you wanted it. I know you wanted it for Charlotte too.
I know. I've been here long enough to see the Hornets get robbed repeatedly, and it's almost comical now.
Another instance, and Jeb, we showed that live picture from Legion Brewing in South Park where the Hornets lottery party was, and it's basically emptying out now. It wasn't like people were furious, but it was just such a shoulders.
They were disappointed.
Everything the air comes out of the room. But we're going to have Doug Branson from Locked On Hornets on live soon from Chicago, who was at the draft lottery, and I'm going to give him some guff because, you were there, man. Could you have done something? And it doesn't matter who the Hornets put in that chair at the lottery in Chicago. They never are the good luck charm. Today it was head coach Charles Lee, who's going to enter his second season, and sure could have used a guy like Cooper Flagg. So I did just get this from the Hornets, and listen, they get the top 4 picks, so that's nothing to, that's a good pick, in this draft, as we'll talk about. They also have the 33rd and 34th overall picks in the second round, so they're going to have 3 of the top 35. Only the Nets have more choices in this draft in that range. Those second-round picks, especially when they're early in the second round, can give you some rotational pieces, but they're also chips to obviously make deals and see what they want to do. So let's just talk about some of the guys we have underneath Cooper Flagg, because it's not going to be Flagg, obviously. But Dylan Harper is somebody that Jalen mentioned from Rutgers. Rutgers has Dylan Harper, son of Ron Harper, the Bulls legend, and they also have Ace Bailey. So I was going to read you the scattering report from John Hollinger of The Athletic. A lot of people think that Harper is the surefire number 2 pick, but it's not as consensus as Cooper Flagg is number 1, and John Hollinger is among those that don't think he's as solidly the number 2 pick. But he does have him over Baylor's VJ Edgecombe, who we kind of talked about, will talk about, is definitely more of a defensive specialist immediately in the NBA, but inconsistent shooter, really good size at 6'6". He's just 19 years old. They're all 18 or 19 coming out of college this year, and they're a little bit more known commodities than they were last year. Not a really fast guy, but had 3 steals per 100 possessions in conference play last year. So defensively, he's got some skills as well. He shoots his free throws well. He had a good shooting percentage, 57.5%. He is going to play a lot. He's going to have the ball a lot. At least he did in college, and we'll see how that plays with a guy like LaMelo Ball. But Dylan Harper is kind of the guy that you may look to next now that you don't get Cooper Flagg.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at it, Dylan Harper is probably the second best player in this draft class. And I really didn't think about it during the season, but this Rutgers team had a lot of talent for a team that didn't even make the tournament. But all of these mock drafts that you look at right now, they could not have even fathomed the scenario we're looking at in the real world. So, yes, I see Dylan Harper going second in a lot of these, but San
Antonio. That was before
Antonio,
things fell the way they did.
Right. Does San Antonio need a point guard? They have Stephon Castle. They have
just
De'Aaron
drafted
Fox.
Castle. Yeah.
Just
traded for Fox.
Right. I don't necessarily know that.
So maybe he falls to 3 or 4.
Right. I don't think that move makes as much sense for them.
Yeah.
So I think that he could absolutely be there.
Yeah. And we talk about what does this team need? It needs a guy who wants to play defense. Right. I can't tell you the last 3 Hornets coaches, James Borrego, Steve Clifford, now Charles Lee, trying to get this roster to play defense. Miles Bridges had several quotes this year. We're really good when we want to be on defense.
Right.
LaMelo's really good when he wants to be on defense. His defensive game actually did tick up this year towards the end of the season. So VJ Edgecombe is a guy that is your pick of need, right? But he's also a potential pick because he could have an explosive offensive game in the NBA at some point. But right away, almost, he slots in as your best defender. I mean, as sad as that is to say, with a roster that's been here for 5 years, the way he played defense at Baylor and the way Scott Drew demands defense at Baylor, I absolutely think he could probably be your top. Now, he'll have a lot of team defense to learn, a lot of NBA system to learn, but he has the defensive intensity and defensive want to.
That's got to be the direction that this team is going to want to go. I mean, you never really can predict, but to your point, I look at this guy, and I loved him on Baylor, like I thought he would tournament. At the end of the day, he probably has the most two-way upside of anybody that's going to go in that top 5, top 10.
Anybody not named Cooper Flagg.
Right, exactly.
Who comes in as an immediate two-way impact player. Edgecombe probably brings you defensive impact right away.
Right. I think for this team, because ultimately, if you look at that, the Hornets are the team that need the most help, which is crazy at 4. But Dallas was a play-in team. And San Antonio lost their best guy halfway through the season. So Charlotte at 4, I think this is a guy who can come in and have the most impact of anybody. Even Cooper Flagg in Dallas, he's still not going to have that because they still have Kyrie. They still have AD. I think Edgecombe makes a lot of sense for this team, looking for someone to hold it down on defense.
So the next guy, Ace Bailey, the other Rutgers kid, 6'10". I mean, just kind of guy that has scouts drooling, just physicality-wise, but, not the most consistent offensive player, kind of a bit of a project there. Do they want to go with that when they have guys that they like offensively in LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, and even Miles Bridges and Mark Williams at times?
Right.
And if those guys are healthy, where would a guy like Ace Bailey slot in right away? So definitely more of a project. And when you're drafting top 4, do you want a project or do you want a sure thing, even if it's on the defensive side of the ball immediately? Now, Jalen brought up the kid from Texas, Trey Johnson, who, if you look at the mocks, he's not up there in the top 5 on a lot of them, but there's a lot of people who really, really like Trey Johnson. He's a really just smooth scorer, a guy that can go get a basket when you need it. 6'6". That's a great size for a player like that. You got some highlight reels that make your jaw drop. So
he was a fun guy
and good effort defensively too. So a guy that hopefully buys into defense right away, and not in the way that VJ Edgecombe or obviously Cooper Flagg would, but I think somebody that could help out right away in that department. So it would be interesting if they pick a 6'6" guard, having Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball already. So we're going to kick it to Chicago, Illinois, because we have Doug Branson from Locked On Hornets joining us now. And Doug, hopefully you can hear me, man. Before we get to who should be at number 4, just the feeling as somebody who has followed this team and this franchise specifically in the lottery for years, what was your reaction when you saw what happened tonight? Okay, sorry. We got Doug now. All right. Buddy, you were there. How come you couldn't do anything for us? Come on.
Well, listen, I did my best. I had the LJ glasses ready. I had the Big Dub hat ready. But unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be. And, this was an incredible result, honestly. And people, I think, on the ESPN broadcast said that there was a stunned silence in the room. It wasn't silent. People were laughing at the idea that not only that the Dallas Mavericks got the number 1 overall pick after trading Luka Doncic, but that both the Philadelphia 76ers and the Spurs jumped up into the top 3. The rich just absolutely getting richer. It was an incredible result.
Doug, the lottery is supposed to help teams regardless of market, get better through the draft. And especially when you're a market like Charlotte is, that is tough to do when you are constantly losing in this system. I know, people are hurt here. Hornets fans have been hurt so many times before. Is this the system the NBA should continue to use?
I think it's a system that is supposed to prevent teams from doing the thing that teams are still doing, honestly. And I mean, less so the Hornets, because I think the Hornets have just been the victims of injury luck or injury bad luck. But certainly, I mean, teams like the Jazz and the Wizards who fell below the Charlotte Hornets, those are teams that were actively losing in order to increase their odds. So, I mean, I think the system is working as intended. It'll be interesting, though, because if you look at the history of the draft, I mean, I think they have oscillated between, giving teams. I mean, if you look at the early drafts in the mid 80s, those were just flat odds across the board. And then they went to the system where you had like 25% odds of getting the first overall pick if you were the last team, and that was too much. So they've kind of gone back and forth and trying to find a balance between giving all of these lottery teams a chance and then helping teams that are just legitimately bad acquire talent. And I think what's interesting, too, is that as you have kids coming out younger, it's much more difficult to project how those players are actually going to play. So, even obviously getting Cooper Flagg would have accelerated things, but it's going to be difficult, I think, 3 to 7 to all the way to 14 to the bottom of the lottery to really determine like how much of an impact those players are going to have until like 2 or 3 years down the road. It's not like it used to be where guys were coming out year 3, year 4 of college, and so you had a true idea, of those top picks of how they're going to impact things. So it's interesting. It's just a lot different.
All right, so you and Walker Mail, as always, are going to host Locked On Hornets tomorrow. You guys put it out every day. It's great stuff. But how much of tomorrow's episode and how many days this week are going to be spent on like how much this hurts? Because you build it up, you have top odds tied with 2 other teams, obviously, and yet again for the Charlotte Hornets, it doesn't happen. Like, how long is it going to take to get over that for some fans?
I don't know that fans. I think fans are numb at this point. I mean, they're certainly disappointed, but this has happened so many times. I mean, the Hornets have dropped positions in the draft many times, and then you take into account too that even when they've gotten lucky and moved up for LaMelo Ball and moved up for Brandon Miller, while those 2 players are obviously talented, both of them have been struck by the injury bug, and so we haven't seen sort of the full elevation of that talent with the franchise yet. So yeah, I mean, it's a difficult time to be a Hornets fan. I think the good news is they didn't drop to 7, and I say that's good news because if you look at the teams that moved to 2 and 3, San Antonio, Philadelphia, you may have already talked about this. It's great for them that they moved up, but like if you're San Antonio, Dylan Harper's sitting there at 2, and you're thinking to yourself, well, we got 2 point guards and Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox, so they're probably going to move that pick. Philadelphia, you're at 3. I think if you were at 1 or 2, you take that pick. But if you're at 3, a lot of question marks around some of the wing players there. Maybe they decide to trade out and add some veteran talent alongside Joel Embiid and Paul George, who they have a lot of sunk cost in already. So, I'm going to speak. I think, Walker and I will speak to the pain tomorrow. There's obvious pain. But there are opportunities if the Hornets do want to move up to 2 or 3 to trade up if that's what they're interested in. I think they have flexibility right now.
All right, so that'll lead me to my next and second to last question for you. If the Hornets were to make such a move and they have a couple second-round picks to play with and they have future firsts, who would you want them to target in that range, that 2 to 3 range?
Yeah, so I mean, if they move up to 2, the obvious pick is Dylan Harper, a guy who can get downhill, very reminiscent of Cade Cunningham. That's the pro comp that I think a lot of people like, and I think he would perfectly complement what LaMelo Ball does well and what he's still struggling with or still working on, which is honestly getting downhill and finishing at the rim. That's a weakness for LaMelo Ball that he continues, I think, to try to improve upon. But I think adding someone next to him that can do that, and Dylan Harper, I mean, that's his go-to skill offensively. would be a great compliment both to him and Brandon Miller. It allows Brandon Miller to stay out on the wing and do what he does best, which is shoot threes. It gives someone for LaMelo to work with in the backcourt and a threat to take some pressure off of him. I mean, how many times do we see teams throwing doubles and triples his way? And then if you're at 3, I think it's really interesting because, Ace Bailey is someone that I think a lot of people look at his wingspan and they look at some of the shots that he created for himself and they see some star potential. I'm not as big on Ace Bailey for the Hornets in particular, because I think they need players that are physical, that play physical, and I didn't see that much from him at Rutgers. So I think a lot of people are projecting him at 3. I think if the Hornets were to move up to 3, I think they would be better off looking at somebody like Trey Johnson or VJ Edgecombe, or even taking a flyer on a guy like Carter Bryant. I mean, that's probably a little too high for Carter Bryant, but I think VJ Edgecombe at 3 makes a lot of sense. VJ Edgecombe at 4 makes a lot of sense. So does Trey Johnson. So the good news is, if the Hornets had fallen to 7, things would have gotten very difficult for them in terms of finding a player that actually fit a need. Even at 4, they can find that player.
All right, so that's my next question. You kind of presented the 2 guys that maybe would be there at 4 in Johnson and Edgecombe. If it's Flagg and Harper and Bailey at 1, 2, and 3, and the Hornets are sitting there at 4, would you go with one of those 2 players? And if you were making the pick, which one would you go with?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's getting a little louder in here. Say again, which of the 1, 2, 3?
So I mean, if it's Flagg and then the 2 kids from Rutgers off the board, who would you want at 4?
I am a little higher on Trey Johnson just because I think people are sleeping a little bit on his defensive abilities. I think that, Texas I don't think they were the best defensive team. So I think if you get him around Charles Lee and the system that he's trying to set up in Charlotte, I'm actually a little bit higher on his defense than a lot of people are. And I think this is how it makes sense of Trey Johnson versus Edgecombe. I have more of a belief that Trey Johnson can be an okay defender than I believe that VJ Edgecombe can be like an impact offensive player. Yep. And the Hornets, they definitely need more defense. There's no doubt about that. But they also need more shooting. And Trey Johnson, the way he comes off of screens, the way that he gets himself open for 3-point shots and then knocked them down at Texas, I mean, I just think he would be a very exciting prospect. And everything that I hear is that when this guy does workouts, he just goes 100%. And, if you look at last year's draft, they fell in love with Tijan Salon. And obviously they fell in love with like his physical profile and the way he could shoot the basketball for a guy his size and the way he could move in transition. But he was a raw prospect. They really fell in love with the guy who was going to work his tail off to be a better player. They said that over and over again, that they really fell in love with the work ethic. And so, I wonder if Trey Johnson or VJ Edgecombe, if they come in and they really nailed that aspect of it. I think when you're talking about two wing players who could impact your team in different ways, it might come down to some of those intangibles. Who's going to fit that Hornets DNA more? It'll be really interesting to see. I think a lot of the work's going to be done in the interview room, sitting down with Jeff Peterson.
All right, Doug Branson from the Draft Lottery in Chicago. Doug, you're bringing home a top 4 pick. Not bad. We thank you for that, and can't wait to hear what you and Walker have to say tomorrow on Locked On Hornets. They do it every single day, and you got to check it out. So that is it for us from the Live Impact News Studio talking NBA Draft Lottery. Again, the Hornets walk away with pick number 4. Some heartbreak, but certainly can get somebody that can provide some hope. We're going to send it now to Charlotte City Council. There's a public comment tonight about some new developments. We'll see you tonight at 11 o'clock.
Community, for us to break these area plans up, give them the respect that they're due. Because again, I'm going to go back to District 3. District 3 has shifted. Now, parts of when we started this conversation of the area plans, what was once District 3 and now parts of District 2. What was once District 2 is now parts of District 1 and District 5. So we have had a shift in our map. It ain't shifted. Their house didn't move. Mm-hmm. But the impact of what we have done has moved their trajectory in that home. And if we say agent in place, neighborhood continuity, neighborhood diversity, let's give the neighborhood the chance to say what that looks like. So I just don't want us, while we're having these discussions and we're sharing our thoughts and ideas, to miss. I started this with saying, let's break up these 14 area plans and not try to approve them. And I hope my colleagues see the value in us considering it this way. Let's not just say yay or nay to 14 area plans. Let's look at the plans individually on their own merit to see if what is being proposed is actually going to help that community to grow and diversify versus dropping a blanket that's going to impact other areas that we have not fully invested in. We started investment, but we haven't completed.
I think that we've heard from everyone, and so we are ready to move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
We need to close the.
No, you have a motion and
We
a
have to
second.
have a motion
To close.
to close the public
Need a
hearing.
vote.
Did you want to say? You have a motion and a
And a second. Who has the motion? And a second? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone opposed?
Just closing the motion.
Just closing. Yeah, just closing the motion. We have another public hearing, and that's on the proposed fiscal year 2026 operating budget. And if you're prepared, we'll go ahead and begin that process. And we're going to start with Lloyd Shear. Lloyd?
He's right here.
I know he's here.
Mayor, do you officially open the public?
Bye-bye.
Officially open the public hearing for this, right?
Lloyd, you don't have to go all the way up top. You could be right there.
No,
Thank you for helping her.
no, Lloyd, no. Oh, Lord.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, honorable council members. Thank you for your service. I'll add the Planning Commission there, too. It's important. We need more money for police, fire department, medic, even though it's not your purview. And we also need more money for transportation. Doing pennies is not going to make it work faster. As I've traveled all over with my business and the county, I found things interesting. In Houston, they charge you $3 a night, and that money goes to subsidize their football, baseball, and basketball arena. They lowered the price on their taxes for prepaid meals and things of that nature. Maybe that'll help increase some people going out to eat now. Then we also need money. So what I found was that in one community, they charge you $1 for community service. That goes to the police, goes to the fire department, goes to their emergency services, and transportation. And when you stayed in the hotel, they gave you a free bus pass to use their public transportation. I know you want to raise a penny, but those pennies are adding up to a lot of seniors and adding up to those that really can't afford it. We've been raising pennies since when I was on the commission. We did a half cent. That's not a half cent, that's a penny. And so what I'm suggesting, I would like the council, and I'm going to speak to the county commission, that we start looking at the fees. Then we don't have to go to the state and ask permission. You have the ability to put fees on there, and think what that would do to the budget in the future. I'm sorry, what?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Think what that would do in the future to help with police, the fire department, and the citizens aren't paying for it. The people that are visiting Charlotte, they have to use our police. They have to use our fire department. They have to have emergency services, and we want them to use our transportation system. It's got to be a different way. We just can't keep going to have a campaign for another half penny or another penny. We've been adding too many pennies over the years, and I'd like to suggest that we look at something different. I apologize. I've got Parkinson's, so that's why
No
I'm
apology
shaking
necessary,
and stuff.
Lloyd. None needed.
But thank you all for your service. I know I used to say I did 8 years of purgatory, and I'm not Catholic, so I understand what you go through. Y'all be safe, be healthy. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have two additional speakers, Kristen Coughlin and Catherine Monage. You'll have 2 minutes once you come down. If you would give us your name.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Kristen Coughlin.
All right. Ms.
First off, I wanted to express our gratitude for not only the proposed allocation of funds towards the Adoption Center and Shelter Expansion Project, but also the integration of ACC into general services. These are exciting steps forward, and I believe countless lives, both animal and human, will be positively impacted by their implementation. A few concerns still remain. First, additional positions were requested by ACC, but it does not appear that they have been proposed. With the timeline of the new shelter expansion still a few years away, interim solutions are vitally important. Intake numbers are higher than ever and will likely continue to climb. Every day, approximately 117 people are moving to the Charlotte, North Carolina area. In 2023, about 66% of U.S. households owned a pet. In addition, around 35% of Americans own more than one pet. In the next 2 years alone, based on that current data, there would be over 56,000 new pet residents to our city without even accounting for the multi-pet households. With those numbers and the already stretched thin staff at ACC, adding the requested positions is crucial to keep pace with the current growth trends. Additionally, when ACC transitions to general services, our hope is that the ACC director will report to the general services director. The reduced bureaucracy that would accompany this reporting structure would result in more time and energy being funneled towards the care and advocacy of our shelter residents. The Adoption Center and shelter expansion, along with the transition to general services, are changes that would not be possible without your care and consideration. And while these will be highly impactful, I would strongly urge you to consider adjusting the proposal to include the additional requested positions. In doing so, it would offer short-term relief while we wait for the longer-term solutions to come to fruition. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Coughlin. Ms. Monge, if that mic doesn't, you might want to put it a little bit closer in, okay? You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, council members. My name is Catherine Monge. I was born and raised here in Charlotte and now attend UNCC. I also volunteer at Charlotte Mecklenburg Animal Care and Control, a place that brings me a deep sense of joy and purpose, even though the work is often stressful, messy, and lately heartbreaking. I've been supporting the shelter in different ways since I was 19, but I only became an official volunteer at 21 because the onboarding process was so long and complicated. This is a problem because we desperately need more volunteers, and I believe more young people like me would step up if the process to get involved were easier and more accessible. That's one reason I support the proposal to separate the animal shelter from CMPD so the shelter can focus more directly on animal care and community involvement. I also want to highlight the urgent need for more resources like kennel space. Overcrowding is constant and adds enormous strain to the volunteers, public, staff, and animals. I strongly support the proposal to fund the shelter expansion project and hope it's just the beginning of continued investment in this critical service. Thank you for listening to our concerns and for addressing some of them in the FY26 budget. It means a lot to us on the front lines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next two speakers are Kane Aldan Bermet.
We have a headline developing right now. It's not here. This is in Baltimore, Maryland right now. This is a large fire, as you can see from this aerial view here. We are told that 2 Baltimore City firefighters, they were injured earlier in battling this fire Monday, and it still looks like there are tons of firefighters and crews still on the scene. As you can see in this shot here, numerous flashing lights all around this fire from to the side, on each side, and even in front of it as well. We're told that crews were responding to this building fire. It's on West Saratoga Street near Park Avenue, if you know where this is in Baltimore. Baltimore Fire Department saying that one of the firefighters is in critical condition tonight. The cause is still under investigation, but actually social media linked these fires, and that's how the media was able to kind of see this. It sounds like the CBS station in Baltimore saying that the fire marshal warning parents and residents about social media challenging, or a certain challenge, involving Chromebooks that has been linked to fires and property damage. So not exactly sure if this is what this is, but we actually did speak about this here in Charlotte on WCNC about this viral Chromebook challenge where folks are putting in to their school-issue Chromebooks certain devices to have them start on fire. It's extremely dangerous, and it has started fires. And as of May 5th, Maryland fire leaders saying they've documented multiple cases in this Chromebook challenge, as it's called. It involves putting these metallic items or even pencils into these charging ports of these devices, and it short circuits these computers starting this fire. So I'm not exactly sure if this is what they're saying. This is in relation to the fire we're looking at here in Baltimore, but it could be. This is something that has led to disciplinary action across Maryland schools, and they're really trying to push folks to watch out for this and to make sure that they're on top of this, especially, like I said, these are school-issued Chromebooks in a lot of instances, so obviously they're damaging school property, and so that could obviously lead to charges in terms of even police arrests potentially. So this is, again, a large fire. 2 Baltimore firefighters injured in battling this blaze. This is near downtown in Baltimore, and we know one of the firefighters is in critical condition tonight. So we will continue to update this situation. Looks like we have Brad Panovich in the studio as well, kind of updating our situation as we continue to watch what happens in Baltimore. And let's bring in our chief meteorologist, Brad Panovich. Brad, you're continuing to track things out there. Any slowing in terms of the rainfall?
The good news is most of the Piedmont, like Charlotte area, is almost completely stopped, and we're in a pretty big lull. But there's one area, a specific area that we've been focused on, and that's in the mountains and foothills, and in particular, Watauga, Avery, Upper Caldwell, and Burke County. So I'm going to zoom in on it. We've got some new flood warnings up there. And this area is by far the area that's been hit the hardest tonight. There's an area called Jonas Ridge, which is right when you go into Avery County, out of Burke County. They're pushing about 5.5 inches of rain in the last 48 hours. So the Watauga River is flooding in parts of Watauga County. That's near Sugar Grove down to Fosco. And then the Linville River is causing some low water crossings there. So you see the 2 flood warnings. These are called area flood warnings because they're just for a large area. It's a lot of creeks and streams. Avery, Burke, Caldwell, and McDowell, that is up until 7:15 in the morning. So this will be an overnight warning. And then Watauga County, that is up until 4:15 in the morning. So I'll zoom in on there just to kind of show you for the folks that watching on the stream. That's kind of where we're watching. So think of Linville, the Linville Gorge, Grandfather Mountain, those areas, and then over there towards Fosco, and then really, honestly, over towards Blowing Rock as well. I'm going to widen this out because I'm going to show you what's heading our way tonight. You can see there's big breaks to the south, but one area of concern that I'm going to keep an eye on for the mountains tonight is this area right here. You see these storms coming out of like Augusta, Georgia, and those are moving north. So those have been strong and severe this evening. So that could be an area where we see some strong storms. And you see the whole low. The good news is the worst of this is kind of shifted to the east, but we could see one more round overnight. And if it goes in the same spots that were hit earlier today, then there could be additional flooding. But the good news, Colin, the rest of the week, the rain chances go down. They don't go to zero. We're going to get back into kind of the afternoon pop-up stuff that we normally get late spring, early summer, and it's going to get hot and humid, not the all-day kind of rain like we had today.
And can't forget, I know you haven't forgotten this, but PGA Championship is in town. A lot of folks are wondering what that is going to look like. You're already talking about the humidity going up. What should people expect as they go out there? I mean, you can't bring umbrellas, certain things like that, right? But you need to be understanding of what you can and cannot bring, but should folks change plans? What does that look like?
I would definitely bring the poncho.
Okay.
And you're definitely going to want to have an idea of what the severe weather policy is out there. Typically what they do, if there's a lightning issue or severe weather on the course, they send everybody back to the buses, the shuttles. Because honestly, that is one of the safest places to be, especially if it's lightning. Because there's not enough shelter on property for those people. So you end up getting sent back to the shuttles, and they bus you back either to the car, or I've seen them just put people on the buses and they wait it out. The other thing is, with the rain we had today out there, about 2 inches at the course, I'd have good waterproof shoes, because there's going to be a lot of wet spots and a lot of wet grass you're going to be walking in. And there's nothing worse than walking a golf course all day with wet socks and shoes. So we laugh sometimes because a lot of people will wear their golf shoes out there. It's kind of funny to see people show up for a sporting event wearing like they're going to play. But the reason people do that is because golf shoes are usually waterproof. And for walking around the golf course, they're not bad. So the Gore-Tex or waterproof lining shoes would probably be a good idea, especially for the practice rounds tomorrow and Wednesday, because if you had tickets today, they're going to be, you can't use them for the main rounds, but you can use them for the practice rounds tomorrow and Wednesday. So you basically got a rain check out of that ticket today.
Yeah, it's nice. And not to mention, there could be spots of mud out there as well. So
yeah, and I think that's why they kept the patrons off today, because if they were trampling over some of these areas, they would have probably tore it up. Pretty good, because those crosswalks, when they cross the fairway,
it's right across.
Even on a dry, it actually gets beaten down. But if it's muddy like it is today, that would just be a mess. So I'm sure that was to save the course and the grounds, was to keep foot traffic off until things dry out a little bit more tomorrow.
Okay. Anything that we should be looking out for overnight? You kind of touched on it, but into tomorrow, there could be some lingering issues potentially there?
Mainly the mountains and foothills. I think here in the Charlotte area, we're not even under a flood watch because we needed the rain, and luckily we've gotten exactly what we needed for the drought. The problem in the mountains is they've just gotten too much too quickly, and when you get it into topography like that, it runs off. I will tell you, just looking at the radar, the good news, that heavy rain band has kind of shifted out of that flood warning area, so they might have a time to receive. But I would really particular parts of Watauga County right now seem to be the hardest hit. So watch out those low water crossings up in the mountains. Don't try to cross any flooded roadways tonight.
Well, and my thoughts go back to obviously Helene, right? A lot of these places had already been inundated with water a couple of months ago. So a lot of those bridges that have been rebuilt, those streams that obviously have made their way closer to homes, should people watch out for some of those issues?
That's really been the issue tonight. Is a lot of these water crossings are temporary, and they're lower bridges. They're closer to the water surface to begin with because they haven't built them back up. And those are getting washed out. And in some cases, they're not getting washed out. They're getting overrun with water. So some of these, especially the smaller bridges to people's individual properties, those are the ones you got to watch out for tonight. And if it's a temporary bridge, I would just stay off it tonight because you don't know how strong those are. Wait till the water recedes so you can kind of inspect it.
Okay. All right. Brad Panovich giving us the update in our forecast. Brad and Brittany have been here and will continue to be throughout the evening and up until the 11 o'clock and potentially even past. Appreciate your time, my friend.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for keeping us safe. Love to talk golf with them when I can as well. A lot of folks looking forward to the PGA Championship this week. Man, if it was last week, we had perfect weather, no issues at all. That's not the way it works. So, all right. So let's get back to City Council. There's been some public hearing, some comments that are still ongoing about the investment and the fiscal year budget and how folks would like to see some of that money spent. We'll go back to that in progress.
About the children, and yet nobody wants to do anything to protect them. We owe it to the next generation to fix our mistakes before they become irreversible. I don't want this to be the world that my children inherit. I don't want them to have to live with a problem that they didn't contribute to creating. The future of humanity deserves better, and we need to act now before it's too late. Again, thank you for my time. My name is Cloflin Johnson, and the kids at my church made this poster in support of climate justice. Thank you.
All right. John Chin and Cass Otley.
Today. John's here.
Okay, John's not here. Cass Otley and Philip Barbie.
Yeah.
Cass and Philip Barbie.
Cass is right there.
I see her, but I'm looking for. Is Philip Barbie here? Okay, thank you. Come on down carefully. Cute little guy.
Am I going first?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was
Thank
supposed
you.
to go first. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Manager, and City Council members. I'm here this evening to talk about equity, opportunity, and generational wealth. The city workers in this city of Charlotte work extremely hard to keep this city clean, to make it attractive, and many people come to the city because of the attractiveness and the cleanliness of the city. But city workers are still struggling because over the past years, they have been behind as far as getting advances, raises, and also a minimum wage. And while the workers appreciate the $24 that was proposed, we have been trying to get a $25 minimum wage for the last 3 years. And we came about that figure from Economic Policy Institute, which states that to live in the city of Charlotte and to thrive and to be able to grow, it would take $26 and change. So while our workers are still moving in the right direction, a lot of them have tried to apply for the Home Down Payment Assistance Program, and they don't make enough money to be able to qualify. And that's heartbreaking, because they want to be able to have homes in the city, they want to be able to live here, they want to be able to thrive here, and we're right there on the cusp. But in able to make it over the hump, we need something aggressive. We need workers to be able to make $25 an hour to be able to live and thrive in the city, and we also need a 6% increase for workers. They work extremely hard on a daily basis. We have 117 new residents that move into Charlotte every single day. Not only does that stress the infrastructure, it also makes more work for the sanitation workers, for the roads and everything else. Over the winter, we had over, I think it was like 400 water main breaks around the city. Charlotte Water worked around the clock in cold, wet, all types of things. We had a meeting and one of our guys was in a hole digging while he was trying to work. And all we're asking for is for you to think about them during this budget. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Carol Hardison.
No.
No? Is she here? Oh.
Philip Barbie.
Philip?
Right there.
Barbie?
He's right.
Sorry. It's been a long day. I probably need to go get my glasses, actually. All right, please, you have 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Philip Barbie. I proudly served the Charlotte Fire Department for 7 years. I also serve on the Public Safety Pay Plan Committee. And I'm here to talk with y'all about the challenges that we're facing as firefighters. Our pay plan starts firefighters at roughly 65% of our market rate, what we're worth. And then we have 5% steps that bring us closer to 100% over time. These are not raises, but structural progression to full market rate. The model is common in public service, but lately it's been misunderstood. The proposed budget claims that a recruit hired in 2020 has received 58% raises over time to now, or 25% or $25,000 increase. That is not accurate. One firefighter I spoke with today started at $42,000. He's now at $57,000. He started in 2022. That's after a promotion. That's 33%. On top of that, we're facing increases to our health insurance premiums, deductibles, and out-of-pocket maximums. Inflation over that same period was 23.56%, meaning that the proposed 1.5% cost of living adjustment is not a raise. We are also being required to work mandatory overtime due to staffing shortages seasonally. This time away from our families and other income opportunities. And if we used any approved leave during our 24-day pay cycle, we're paid straight time for that mandatory overtime. What can you do about this, you might ask? First, use the ARPA funds to keep health insurance costs flat while working on a sustainable solution long term. Second, ensure firefighters that are forced to work overtime receive time and a half regardless of leave taken. Thank you for your time and support.
Thank you. All right, the next person that I have is Carol Hardison and Tiffany Fant.
Oh, they put their signs on the glass.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and the women of Charlotte City Council.
Oh, thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here in support of the people's budget. I'm Carol Hardison.
You might want to pull the mic up a little bit, Carol. Thank you.
I'm Carol Hardison. I'm here in support of the people's budget. I'm the CEO of Charlotte's Crisis Assistance Ministry. We're a one-stop shop safety net for basic needs for people struggling for sustainable housing. They seek housing stability in the form of rent payments, or it might be a free pair of work boots so they can take a job in our community. I had the pleasure of joining you all last week for the manager's presentation and was very pleasantly surprised to hear a lot about the several benefits that were made available, some of the pay increases. But as you've heard from the two before me, we're not world-class yet. And so if we want to be a world-class city, we have to pay the people that keep the city running. They are the reason our city exists. We need $25 an hour. We need to support our neighbors at Crisis Assistance Ministry and the fire department. And particularly, I'll say, as was referenced earlier with some of the speakers in the people's budget, the air conditioning pilot. I really like that. We work with over 400 landlords. And I know those 7,500 people who need those ACs are most likely living in those apartment complexes that we work with. We would love to partner with you to reach out to those individuals and those landlords. It's a true danger. It's a safety issue. When moms and dads come and we know their children are struggling, fans just don't get it. It's a safety issue, and I'd love to see that pilot take opportunity. Speaking of working in partnership, I want to close by saying I started my day with 3 people from Housing and Neighborhood Services who came to Crisis Assistance with a neat new idea about how to partner to help our residents further. So thank you for that partnership.
Thank you.
Hi, how y'all doing today? Good stuff. I am Tiffany Fant, Executive Director of Soul Nation, a climate and environmental justice organization here in Charlotte. I am also a Charlotte native, which is most important, West Side all day, with roots in Hidden Valley. And I'm also, AKA a unicorn. And we all know that unicorns are magical, so let's just follow the magic. I am here because Soul Nation is a part of the people's budget. Many people have various feelings about climate and environmental justice, but feelings aren't facts. Facts are Charlotte's historically redlined neighborhoods, particularly those with a higher percentage of Black residents, face greater risk from extreme weather events like heat waves and flooding, as well as increased exposure to air pollution. Fact, there is less tree canopy in East and West Charlotte, and without canopy, those areas heat more quickly in the summer and cool in the winter, which means higher energy bills. In sharing these facts, I want it to be clear that we are all experiencing climate change, but we are not experiencing climate change in the same way. So Soul Nation's dollars and ultimately the budget, approving Soul Nation dollars and ultimately the budget means that we will be able to have community-owned data that is effectively collected and documents the environmental issues from those most impacted, aggregate and prioritize tangible solutions, and partner with the city to inform your various plans, such as the 2040, CAP Plus, the Bloomberg American City Challenge, and others. As your official, unofficial climate ambassador unicorn, I have asked for what I wanted, but thank you for approving what we need, because environmental justice, climate justice is a through line to all of the issues the city is trying to solve. Thank you for your time this evening.
All right, Robin McEnroth and Sierra Masplik.
Good evening. My name is Robin McEnroth.
I'm a foster pet parent, and in my spare time, I volunteer for Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, the Humane Society of Charlotte, Providence Meadows Assisted Living, and the Matthews Library. I wanted to thank the council for your recent proposals in regards to funding a couple important items for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Animal Care and Control for fiscal year 26. The first is the advocating for funds for the new shelter expansion project and pet adoption center. And the second is to move the animal control under the general services budget. I strongly support the new pet adoption center and general expansion because, as you've heard from others, the numbers are higher than ever in terms of intake. The pets are staying longer, and honestly, we need the expanded capacity that new center will provide. It also will be designed with life-saving programs in mind and to make adoption more accessible to more communities in the greater Charlotte area. Second, I strongly support moving animal control under the general services budget. As we've heard before, we hope that realignment will result in a higher priority for animal life-saving issues and also allow the shelter to attract and retain the staff that they need to effectively operate the shelter. As you've heard from others, there are a couple items that we didn't see proposed in the council's recommendations, and those are the fact that CMAQ requested extra support staff.
Having some technical difficulties with the Charlotte City Council meeting. We'll go to Weddington as they have a town council, a regular meeting. We're hoping to have more on the zoning of building in terms of more homes going up. There's been some discrepancies in terms of what residents feel that could impact wildlife, this new development and these new buildings. So we'll go into this as this is already in session.
So, again, trying to do my homework, I got online and started looking up things about eagles. You know, what does the national wildlife people say about it? And I actually went over to Arrow Plantation, looked around, and it is a beautiful subdivision. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. You've got the man-made lakes, you've got the big lots, you've got everything over there. And Karen, if you can bring up that first picture for me. And what if you'll notice on that picture there, right just below, and forgive me for standing here, but the eagles are right up there, kind of in the corner up there, just to the top. You know, if you go to that top lake, kind of over there to the right. There's an airport that is on, now, laugh if you will. I've been in aviation over 40 years. And water and waterfowl and aircraft don't mix well. Okay? Now, that airport, I did call. I was trying to find out if there were any restrictions, you know, if the neighborhood or if the airport had any restrictions on aircraft operations during, you know, this eagle nesting season, the fledging season, that kind of thing. So I spoke to the Charlotte FAA office. I was indirected to the regional office in Memphis. And anybody, if anybody wants the names, I can provide them with who I spoke to. And then I spoke with the North Carolina Division of Aviation office. And basically they said, well, it's a private airport. You know, the FAA does not regulate it, but you'd have to contact the airport manager. And I did. I spoke to Mr. Alan Osborne, a very nice gentleman. We had a really good conversation. And what he told me is that airport averages basically one aircraft movement a day. That's takeoff, approach, and landing. So you figure 5 a week, you know, 30 a month. Plus, you have got a commercial helicopter operation that is on that field, Charlotte Helicopters. Google them up, look at their Facebook page. I know I did. Now, I asked, you know, Mr. Osborne, I said, and I could not get the traffic numbers from the helicopter guy because he's out of town right now. He won't be back in town until June. But basically, Mr. Osborne told me that there are no restrictions on aircraft operations around this riparian area that have migratory waterfowl. Okay. And that field is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, has pilot activated airfield lighting, 5 clicks on 1 to 23.0, so they can come in and out at night. And all I'm telling you is and the FAA also has specific things they talk about when they're talking about protecting eagles around active airports. And rather than, you can look them up, I won't bore you with all of them, but trust me, there's nothing there. There's no rules, there's no NOTAMs, no airfield advisories, no circulars that have gone out. And I went to like 5 different web pages, AOPA, again, I can list them for you if you want. So everybody's talking about protecting this environment, okay? Protecting the eagles and by extension, these other, wildlife. And I can assure you that bird strikes are a real thing. I have flown for 40 years. When I was at my last job,
Be careful,
I was the squadron safety officer. I dealt with bird strikes all the time. So for anybody to say that that is not a threat, or that is, and more importantly, it's not an active threat, I don't believe is telling the other side of this story. We're talking about here a lot of things that I've heard my colleagues say here about, well, this could happen, or what if this happens? That's the difference between a potential threat and an active threat, okay? So I got to the point after I'd looked all this up and I had tried to do my reading, but I said, well, let me just go to the subject matter expert. Let me just go to, find out who this person is. And his name is Mr. Tompkins, and he is in the U.S. National Wildlife Service office in Asheville, North Carolina. I encourage y'all to talk to him because when I called him up, he said, oh, yes, I am well aware of what's going on down with those eagles at Arrow Plantation. He said, I've been getting phone calls all year about it.
All right, we're going to interrupt this town council meeting here in Weddington. It will continue, and we'll continue to monitor that situation, as well as the Charlotte City Council that continues to have public comment. That session continues to go on, but we want to bring in meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees, who is with me right now. Brittany, I know that you and Brad fast at work trying to track all of these storms over the last couple of hours. Things seem to be moving through the area continuously here, and it seems like our mountain communities is where you guys are really watching, especially inundated with this water, right?
Yeah, we have a few areas, especially at the higher elevations. Historically, radar data is really, really bad at estimating how much rain happened at the upper levels of the atmosphere. It just doesn't reach that high. So places like Jonas Ridge, northern parts, especially higher elevations, especially of Ashwaubenon counties, have recorded a few spots over 5 inches of rain. So again, we talked about this a little bit during the newscast. There was some hype on social media about how this was like Helene. That is absolutely not the case, but it will provide that risk for some isolated flooding. There is a flash flood warning that was recently issued through tomorrow morning by the National Weather Service. Biggest impact here is just, again, off and on flooding potential. If you look a little bit further south, if you're looking at radar right now, you can see that we're seeing a big break for the Piedmont. That doesn't necessarily mean that the rain is over. It's just we're going to see lesser activity. If you look a little bit further south, again, we mentioned this during the newscast, we kind of have what is almost like a hybrid tropical system, at least what it feels like. We have a really strong low pressure system. We're on the side that you would see pockets of heavy rain off and on, and you can see that also creating that flash flood warning down a little bit further south and west of us. So it's these bands that you can see that are still chilling in Georgia and South Carolina that we'll have to watch, because as they wrap around, that will still provide a risk for some rain overnight. And then a wider view, you can actually see where the low is spinning right now. Now, how does that impact you now? Well, the fact that we've seen a lot of rain. Here's the estimated totals from the last 48 hours. I toggled on some of these for you guys to see. Richmond County, we have parts of Chesterfield County actually recording at the unofficial sensors about 4.5 inches even there. It looks like, looking a little bit closer, this is near places like Great Falls or toward portions there of Richmond County, closer to Rockingham as well. And so you can see a few of those spots really picking up some heavier totals. Pretty much the closer you get to Charlotte, it's closer to about 1 to 2 inches. And then there's those isolated spots there of 2.5 inches for the mountains. Again, these are the areas that we have to watch the official total rain gauges that we have, because if you look at radar estimates, it only thinks like 2.5 inches, but that we know that is not the case. And then again, across the Piedmont, about 1 to 2 inches for most. So how does this impact you tomorrow? Well, we'll be tracking rain overnight, and then it's much more isolated for Wednesday or Tuesday and Wednesday. I think this is a big question too, with a lot of people being out this week at the PGA Championship. I know things did not go well for them today, but of course, if you had a ticket, you can go tomorrow. Rain chances will continue overnight, and then they're kind of teeter-tottering back and forth between that 20 to 30% for Tuesday and Wednesday. So here's the flooding risk. Right now, we're still under medium risk for our entire area. Notice, though, that we start to trim that back to really only places north of Charlotte tomorrow, and then we're pretty much out of here by Wednesday. So again, it doesn't mean we won't see rain and storm activity Tuesday and Wednesday. It's just going to be much less widespread. Here's 3 o'clock in the morning. You can see again some scattered activity, still some pockets of heavy rain, but there's Tuesday at 11. Again, you have multiple hour breaks versus today. It felt like the breaks were like 30 minutes to an hour at the most.
Yeah.
And then you'll kind of see that scattered activity continue through Tuesday and Wednesday. So the worst rain that you've had is either happened already or it's going to happen overnight heading into Tuesday morning. I'd say we start to see those breaks and those drier conditions by about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And then Tuesday and Wednesday scattered rain. The rest of the week, it's going to get a lot hotter. So if you are going to be out of the PGA Championship, especially Thursday, Friday, Saturday, make sure you are staying safe, staying hydrated, as we'll have multiple days with highs in the mid to upper 80s. So we kind of go from a really, really significant wet pattern to a much drier pattern, but impacts nonetheless. Instead of heavy rain and flooding, the impacts will be needing to take breaks and needing to stay hydrated.
And Brittany, I talked to Brad a little bit about this, but a lot of those places, right, Banner Elk, Boone, Watauga County, Ashe, those counties that are seeing this rainfall, those are places that have been inundated with water, obviously, from Helene. So a lot of those places, in respect to, some of those temporary bridges, those overpasses, even some of those banks have been moved closer to folks' homes. So what would be your advice as we go into the evening hours? I mean, they can download WCNC the app and make sure that, they have the radar, listen to us as much as possible. But any advice for those folks as we go into the evening hours?
I mean, it sounds cliche, but the biggest advice I would say is just to not travel if you don't have to. I think the biggest issue when you encounter higher elevation spots that have 5 to 6 inches of rain is that when something potentially washes away, a bridge, and people try to drive, oftentimes it's too rainy and too flooded to see whether or not the bridge has washed away or the roadway has washed away. About 85% of flooding deaths that happen, this isn't just in the Carolinas, but across the country, happen when people drive through flooded roadways and they get stuck in their car and they die in their car. So it's a very scary situation, but also something that is very easily avoidable. Of course, having the app and having the push notifications turned on so that if something were to happen, at this point, it does not look to be, again, a widespread issue like that. But I mean, you can see some of the totals if you look back at your screen. I mean, Jonas Ridge picking up almost 5.5 inches of rain in the last 48 hours. It's a lot of rain. Again, it's not Helene standards, but if there were to be something that happened, some kind of landslide, things like that, even if it's isolated for a few spots, you could get that notification, of course, always having our app. I think it's the best way to stay updated with what's happening now. Best part, I think, about working in news in 2025 and not 20 years ago is the fact that you don't have to wait until the next newscast to find the next big breaking news or big breaking weather story. You can get it right here.
Yeah, and download WCNC Plus. That's a great plug right there. I will ask you, because I know that the rain chances trend downwards as we go into later work week, right? PGA Championship is here. But again, our ground is going to be saturated. So any rain that we do get, what type of issues could arise? Not necessarily flash flooding, right? But we could be standing water, that type of situation throughout the week?
Yeah, it could be really, really localized. So for example, when you're driving on the roads, everybody knows what I'm talking about. And it's like, there's a slight tilt, and then you're on like the right side of the road and you can see it's super flooded on the other side and people are driving through and it's like inundating your windshield. I mean, that still impacts you because even if they're not doing it on purpose, it's a lot of rain hitting your windshield at one time. So I'd say take it easy. Another thing I will say, especially as we get closer to the PGA Championship, we're not at the worst part of the year yet, but as it gets hotter and there's standing water, mosquitoes. and types
Yeah.
of bugs.
Yeah.
So again, it won't be like it would be if we were having the PGA Championship in July or something like that. But that is something to just be aware of if you're going to be outside for long periods of time.
Okay.
Again, it sounds cliche, but a sunburn is still a burn on your skin.
Yeah.
It can still impact you. And mosquito bites, if you're like me and they love it.
Yeah.
It's just it's annoying. So it doesn't have to be severe weather. It can be nuisance weather, and it can be nuisance impacts that have to do with the weather. We're trying to keep you weather aware all the time.
Right. And make sure if you are going to head out to PGA Championship, right, maybe wear those Gore-Tex type of shoes. You know, Brad was talking about the golf shoes. A lot of times protect folks from that type of wet weather. They already have that built-in type of protection there for any wet stuff that you may step in. So it might be good just to plan ahead. Obviously, if you had tickets for today, they will not have you come out. They did not have folks come out, but you can use those, I think they're Championship Plus tickets, something like that, Tuesday and Wednesday for the practice rounds and stuff. So you can't use those after Wednesday, but at least they're allowing folks to get back out there. So Brittany, I know you and Brad have been hard at work all night long, and I know you guys will continue to be to try and keep us safe. So I'll have you back in here in the next couple of minutes, but for now, I'll let you skedaddle and get out of here. I know you have more work to do. So always appreciate you being a part of our stream and bolstering us here on WCNC Plus, because our team of meteorologists are so important to what we do here on WCNC. So Brittany, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Colin.
Of course.
See you later.
Yeah, see you in a little bit. All right. It's great to have Brittany and Brad join us. We'll see them again in the next couple of, I shouldn't say minutes, next hour or so. We'll also update things at the 11 o'clock hour on our linear show. Weddington is still going on. The town council meeting, it seems like to be in their last leg or last couple of minutes here as we near 9 o'clock now. Our stream will go on until 10 o'clock. Charlotte City Council still is going strong as well. Seems like public comments are still going in that. So we'll go back to the Weddington Town Council meeting for now, and we'll update you on both situations whenever we get some updates.
Less than 1% that is going to be impacted. So I would just ask if your decision is going to be made on the fact that the application is not complete. The application is complete. We've got consultants here that can talk about it if need be. Thank you.
Sure. So the second item from my list, out of all the things that y'all listed, the two things that I did not have not reviewed and gotten comfortable with was having an arborist go out to confirm their tree count or tree survey. Can you speak to that?
Do you have any problem with that? I mean, I will say that, and I'll let Mr. Price jump in, but a tree survey was done by a professional tree surveyor. They surveyed over 6,000 trees. That has been submitted. The tree plan, what has been agreed to is essentially Toll has submitted an exhibit that basically says, these are the only areas that we will touch. And if we touch anything outside of this, we're subject to the penalties. Now, keep in mind, under that plan, there's something like 78 acres that are undisturbed of the 167. So it's well above what the open space requirements are. There's significant undisturbed area that is already being protected. But with regard to the areas where homes or septic will be installed, there's an exhibit that spells out exactly, and it's from the envelope of the house, 50 feet behind that, and then the areas where the septic could go. That has been submitted to staff and was part of the discussions on the conditions that have been agreed to.
Okay,
Do you have any issue with it? And I don't think Toll would have any issue with someone that the county or the town selects coming out and doing their own tree survey. But again, it is 167 acres with 6,000 trees that have been surveyed.
Okay. For those two conditions that you're
Question. You said something about the stormwater being done. Has it been submitted to the town? The fact that it's done is one thing. Is it submitted to the town? Because I'm not aware of it being submitted to the town. Because we would love to see it if you've done it.
The original stormwater concept plan was submitted with the initial submittal. It was a written description.
In February of 24?
No, before that. The first submittal.
The very first one.
The very first.
We had notes back in the record showing that what was provided was inadequate.
I never got that.
Yeah, and we
It was there. The written description of the stormwater, the concept, how the stormwater was going to be handled was submitted with the conservation plan. Graphically, that changed. Graphically, the stormwater is shown on the site plan.
Yeah, your ponds are shown.
The ponds
But the
and
calculations are not shown.
which are not required at sketch plan.
Oh,
Yes,
yes,
they
they
are.
are.
I disagree, but
We,
We
we're
can
here.
agree to disagree.
Yeah.
So your statement is that the plan is viable based on the drawing.
this is the sketch plan, the information that is required within the sketch plan in the Appendix 2B. Our stormwater concept is shown graphically. The ponds are located. They may adjust a bit depending on the grading, but we're not there yet. We're not at civil design. We are at sketch plan level for a rezoning.
Look at
I feel the need to interject here. I've been taking as many punches as I can. Look, there's
Guys, please stop.
classic. Okay, so no, stormwater calculations are not required at this stage. How water is transferred is required. A stormwater plan is required. That's what's in Appendix 2B, not calculations. Does not say calculations.
I don't even see a plan. I see little drawings on a map.
And
I don't see a
I'm very
plan.
discouraged that you're spending time discussing application completeness rather than the merits of the project itself, its zoning requirements, and its compliance with the land use plan.
I disagree.
We can all agree to disagree.
Yeah.
So let's vote. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
I'm to that point.
people.
I
We
mean,
can fuss at each other all night, doesn't no
Yeah.
good.
I mean, I have other things I could cover too, but I don't know if it's even worth it at this point.
Well, if you want it on the record, you better get it.
You know, I'll say this, I'll put it on the record. You know, and go back to the tree safe. You know, it talks about that they will not clear, they will only clear the home sites up to, how does it read here? It
50
says
feet beyond the house.
50 feet beyond the house, okay? I've learned if you don't have everything in there, then there's a wiggle room around everything. And what about, you talking about behind the house? What about, these are 1 acre lots. What about in between the houses? What about, all around that's not stated, I don't
Did you
see
share
that in
those
there.
concerns with Toll though? Because I know like I way back got an email from a Weddington Hills representative and they wanted their turbidity tested too. So I
Yes.
sent that along and,
Yes.
and they agreed. So you've shared these concerns that you're expressing right now with Toll?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Brandon.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No problem.
You've shared these concerns that you're expressing right now with Toll in terms of like 50 feet on this side or that, all these things that you're listing right now, they've been shared with the developer or with someone from the town who can then relay it to the developer?
No, we sent conditions and this is what came back. Yeah. So,
But I guess you just said that if it's not explicitly stated in there that they won't adhere to it. Did you say explicitly what you wanted and you feel like it was excluded from the conditions?
no, I didn't specifically say that. No, I
Because you
didn't.
specifically asked for the full tree ordinance that
Correct.
we have.
Correct.
Yes, and they denied that,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
So I
which
didn't
would
think,
include all that.
right. So,
But they were grandfathered. They didn't
They are.
have to, they didn't have to do what they've done in the conditions they've agreed to.
but last I knew, we still have conditional zoning in the town of Weddington,
Yes,
correct?
yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll say one last thing, the gentleman that got up even made a comment. He said, yeah, we don't have a lot of things complete, but we got people who are here who will talk about it. Or just, did you say something to that effect?
No, that's,
You said something to that effect that,
No, what I said was that all the things that you were talking about weren't submitted, were in fact submitted, and that we have consultants here who can speak to it if you have questions. That was my statement, for the record.
if they're submitted for the record, why don't we see it?
Again, you said there was no stormwater plan. You just had a consultant come up and explain to you what the stormwater plan was, and your own staff admits that that's a completed stormwater plan for purposes of your UDO. I don't know what else to
Yeah, I
answer
don't
that
know
question.
How else to tell you to look at the UDO too when you submit a plan. But anyway, let's move on. Let's move on.
yes.
Somebody make a motion
Uh,
in the affirmative.
all right.
That's the way you do this.
We'll do two motions. We'll make a motion to approve it and we'll,
Well, you do it one way. the way you're supposed to do is make a motion in the affirmative and it'll go up or down one way or the other. That's it. That is the way to do it, correct, Karen?
All
It's
right.
a motion to the affirmative, so who wants
I
to
make a motion to approve ordinance CZ 2025-03 Toll Brothers Weddington Crossing.
To approve it?
I
Yep.
make a motion to approve it.
No, all that means is a motion. Nobody says how they're voting. They're just making a motion. I could have made the exact same motion with the same effect.
Okay. All in favor of this motion, approving this, raise your hand. Okay, we have two in favor of approving it, all in favor of turning it down, denying it. At this point, raise your hand. We have two, it's 2-2 tie. As mayor of this town, I'm going to vote and side with Darcy and Tom at the opposed to a deny this project. And so the project is denied.
Why? Sorry.
Please. We have one more motion. We have a motion to approve the statement of
I make a
motion of following statement.
It's just the motion of reasonableness.
Just-
He's got it.
Right. Can I have a motion to approve the following statement? CZ 2025-3 is inconsistent with the town's land use plan and not reasonable because it is inconsistent with Conservation Goal 3 in that it poses grading and vegetative clearing in environmental sensitive areas. It is inconsistent with Land Use Policy LU 2.3 and Conservation Policy C3.3 in that erosion from site grading and stormwater runoff caused by the increased impervious area planned for development create an unacceptable risk of significant damage and injury to neighboring properties. It is inconsistent with the town's land use goal of preserving natural assets and limiting development near natural resources, and that it threatens the habitats of federally protected endangered wildlife. It is inconsistent with Conservation Policy C3.2, which limits the development to areas of town that have suitable soil, topographical characteristics for development. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve the statement of reasonableness.
Okay,
So moved.
so moved. All in favor? Okay, and all opposed? There's two. All right, as mayor, I will side to approve this motion. So
It was done.
this motion fails.
Can we take a short break?
Yes, can we, Council, would you be okay
Yes.
for a 10-minute recess?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute recess.
My bladder is not last.
I'll call you tomorrow. I'm gonna run aside. I've never seen you sabotage like that in my life. You said, why did you do that? This is not over. This is not okay.
All right, we will have updates on the town council in Weddington tonight at 11 o'clock on our Lydia show on WCNC. But for now, we're going to go back to the Charlotte City Council meeting. Seems like the public comment hearing has ended and they're back into business.
This one because I was really excited to see the partnership from the North Carolina Department of Transportation to re-amortize these funds so that we could widen a road in the far east area of East Charlotte. So I've actually touted this to some neighbors today, and they all were pretty excited. So thank you for that.
All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Anyone opposed? All right, that one passes. The next one is 19, to have an agreement with Helping Hands Outreach H20 Foundation and authorize the payment of help to Helping Hands Outreach in the amount equivalent to communications rental revenue on Charlotte water towers for the duration of the agreement, authorizing the city manager to renew and amend the agreement consistent with the purpose.
Motion to adopt A, B, and C.
Second. Motion to adopt A, B, and C. We have a first and a second. Any comments?
Madam Mayor. Just want to quickly shout out Ms. Charles. She sat here throughout the end of the meeting. A noble effort indeed, Ms. Charles, but thank you for all the work and your leadership for Charlotte Water. We were talking about you earlier up on the second floor and your leadership, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, so all in favor? Oh, look at that. That is cool, yeah. Very cool. I know. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you. The next item. Here we go. So the next items, I hope that you've provided the clerk the information for the nominations to the various committees, and the clerk will, do you want to do this evening or tomorrow? Information? This evening, let's go. Madam Clerk.
Mayor and council.
All right, this is wrapping up. We do want to get to an announcement by the president earlier today. He signed an executive order setting a 30-day deadline for drug makers to electively lower the cost of prescription drugs in the United States. There's been a lot of talk on if the Biden administration had done this prior during his term. We can verify that for folks. We've had people reach out to see what that looks like and if that has happened. So, of course, wait for us to come back on that moment. But this piece of information, this happened earlier, and apparently, I'm getting this from the AP, it's still unclear what, if any, impact the Republican president's executive order will have on millions of Americans who have private health insurance. The federal government has the most power to shape the price it pays for drugs covered by Medicare and Medicaid. But his promise, the president's promise, has been on saving Americans on these drug prices. So let's go to this, as this happened a little bit earlier in the White House.
Maybe find reasons why it's not, but I can't imagine, because we have a lot of great things happening. It's been a very strong week and a very strong weekend. Before we begin, let me say a few words about the historic events that took place over the last few days. On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. And they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop. And I'm very proud to let you know that the leadership of India and Pakistan was unwavering, powerful, but unwavering in both cases, and having these, they really were, from the standpoint of having the strength and the wisdom and fortitude to fully know and to understand the gravity of the situation. And we helped a lot. And we helped also with trade. I said, come on, we're going to do a lot of trade with you guys. Let's stop it. Let's stop it. If you stop it, we're doing trade. If you don't stop it, we're not going to do any trade. People have never really used trade the way I used it. That I can tell you. And all of a sudden they said, I think we're going to stop. And they have. And they did it for a lot of reasons, but trade is a big one. We're going to do a lot of trade with Pakistan. We're going to do a lot of trade with India. We're negotiating with India right now. We're going to be soon negotiating with Pakistan. And we stopped the nuclear conflict. I think it could have been a bad nuclear war. Millions of people could have been killed, so I'm very proud of that. I also want to thank Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio for their work and efforts. They worked very hard on that. We also, as you know, created a situation where the Houthis, for the first time ever, have ceased firing, and they've let it be known that they're not going to be firing at American ships anymore, not going to be firing at Americans anymore. This was a heavy barrage that lasted for approximately 50 days. And as you know, they've been in war essentially for forever. But over the last 10 years, they've been very difficult for other countries. Nobody was able to do what we did. But they stopped, and we take their word for it. Their surrogates and them directly said, we don't want to do this anymore. And so we were satisfied with that. In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the larger structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already on, that are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs. Because they don't want to pay 25, 50, or 100% tariffs, so they're moving them back to the United States. I spoke to Tim Cook this morning, and he's going to, I think, even up his numbers, $500 billion. He's going to be building a lot of plants in the United States for Apple, and we look forward to that. I really do look forward to that. But the talks in Geneva were very friendly. The relationship is very good. We're not looking to hurt China. China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories. They were having a lot of unrest. And they were very happy to be able to do something with us. And the relationship is very, very good. I'll speak to President Xi maybe at the end of the week. We have some other things we're doing. But one of the biggest things that we're doing, and I don't know if people realize this, but we made a great deal with China, a great trade deal, but it was a much bigger deal originally, and then they canceled it right in the last day. Some of you faces, I remember, were there when that happened. I remember you. And we had a deal where they opened up their country to trade with the United States, and they took that away at the last moment, and then I canceled the whole thing, and then 6 months later we ended up doing a smaller deal, but it was a big deal. It was $50 billion worth of product that they were going to purchase from our farmers, et cetera. And we agreed to that. People thought it was 15 because they were doing 15. We made it 50 because I misunderstood the 15. I thought I said, you got to get 50. Because when I asked, if you remember the story, when I asked, what are we doing with them, my Secretary of Agriculture at the time, Sonny Perdue, said, sir, it's about 15 billion, and we're asking for 15. And I thought he said 50. So I said, so they came back with a deal at 15, and I said, no way, I want 50, because you said 50. They said, sir, we didn't say that anyway. Bottom line, I said, go back and ask for 50, and they gave us 50. And they were honoring the deal, and we would call them up a lot for the corn and for the wheat and for everything. They were honoring the deal, and then when Biden got in, they no longer honored the deal. There was nobody to call. I would call on an average of once every 2 weeks to say, come on, you have to speed it up a little bit. And our farmers were doing great. I said to them, buy more land and bigger tractors, if you remember. That's what happened. But the deal was a very good deal. But the best part of the deal was that we opened up China. China agreed to open itself up to American business to go in. And it would have been a great thing, I think, for China. They would be able to see things that they haven't seen. They would be able to buy products that they have never been able to buy. Would have been great for American business. I think it would have brought unity between China, better unity between China and the United States. And the bottom line is that they canceled it the last day. We were all set to sign it, and then I went a little bit angry. I got a little angry. I said, they canceled the deal. The deal was done. It was all ready to be signed, and people went over there, came back to me, sir, they don't want to sign the opening up China. Well, the biggest thing that we're discussing is the opening up China, and they've agreed to do that, but it's going to take a while to paper it. You know, that's not the easiest thing to paper. But that's the single, I think, to me, some people would disagree. Some people would say we're getting a lot of money with tariffs or whatever. But, you know, especially when you add what we already have. Because remember, we're already getting the 50% on steel and different things. That's not included in these numbers. So you can add that. But the biggest thing to me is the opening up. I think it would be fantastic for our businesses if we could go in and compete with China. It would be a lot of jobs for China. It would be, I think, at a time when they can frankly use the jobs. And that's what we're talking about. So that's a very, very important element to add. So when Scott, I watched him speak the other day, and I think he didn't want to say it, but I said, it's okay to say it. Look, if we don't get it, we don't get it. But if we don't get it, it won't be a positive thing. But if we do get it, I think it's maybe the most important thing to happen. Because if you think about it, we opened up our country to China. They come, they have very few restrictions. And they didn't open their country to us. Never made sense to me. It's not fair. And they've agreed to open China, fully open China. And I think it's going to be fantastic for China. I think it's going to be fantastic for us. And I think it's going to be great for unification and peace. China will also suspend and remove all of its non-monetary barriers. They've agreed to do that. Well, they're very numerous. But again, to me, the biggest thing that came out of that meeting is they've agreed. Now, we have to get it papered, but they've agreed to open up China. It's going to be great for everybody. And third, I'm very happy to announce that Idan Alexander, an American citizen who until recently most thought was no longer living, thought was dead, is going to be released in about 2 hours, actually. And he's going to be released before the eyes of Steve Witkoff, who has done a fantastic job. I know a lot of people that have a lot of talent. I know Steve had a lot of talent. But I know a lot of people with a lot of talent, but there's one that I thought had a special way about him, special personality, aside from being a good deal maker, had a special way about him, and it was Steve. Knew very little about the subject matter, who does, but he learned it in about 2 hours. And he's been fantastic, so I want to just thank Steve. But they're going to be releasing Idan in about...
Interrupt the president really quickly, as we do have Brittany Van Voorhees coming back to the Impact Studio here on WCNC Plus. Brittany, thanks for joining us. It's good to see you again.
Yes.
How's
Not much has changed in the last 30 minutes.
I know, but you're trying to keep us updated.
Oh, of course.
And I appreciate
Just want
that.
you to know.
Yes, yeah. So we're still seeing things, or still seeing the rain make its way. It's going from south to north?
Yes.
Is that okay to say?
So a little bit different than what we normally see.
Right.
And I feel like this is fun to talk about sometimes when we talk about the differences. So normally I feel like when we have a lot of heavy rain this time of year, it storms along a cold front. So everything's moving northwest to southeast. This is a low pressure system that's essentially centered over parts of Georgia and Alabama. And so we're seeing the outer bands is how we would be describing it if it was like a tropical system.
Okay.
So the rain is essentially starting in South Carolina and kind of wrapping around into North Carolina. And I know you were with us, but I don't know if all the viewers were, of course. But that is how we got that dry slot, where like it was not raining in the Piedmont, and then it was raining in the mountains and foothills. Because when you have those kind of cyclonic rotation, you'll oftentimes get little teeny tiny dry slots of drier air where like one area will be seeing really heavy rain and one won't, which is why we kind of talked over the weekend about how there would be very, very isolated spots of quick downpours, and that's really what we've seen in the mountains and foothills.
Got you.
Which, as you know, we're most impacted by Helene.
Right.
So that's when I think anytime we have a flooding risk now there, especially just because recovery is still happening, we're really honing in on those.
That makes sense. I mean, especially when we've had nearly 5 inches of rain in some areas. It's quite crazy. I do have to ask, because I did see something about the jet stream, right? We're below this jet stream that's kind of sitting over the southeast, and that's kind of helping us usher these, I shouldn't say storms, because that's the wrong impact, but this rain kind of inundating our area, right? And that's going to continue throughout the week, right?
Yeah, even though we're not seeing storms, you're still not, you're correct in saying that,
Right.
because there are other parts of the area that aren't seeing storms.
Okay.
Like the Georgia has seen storms, South Carolina. Essentially the only reason why we haven't is that we're pretty cloudy, so we weren't we were a little bit more stable today, but remember that was that low end storm risk a little bit further south of us. It's because that was kind of tapping into some of that dry slot, which meant that there was a chance we could see some daytime heating, which could have allowed for that. It's looking less and less likely now, but you're absolutely correct. Essentially, anytime that the jet stream sees a bump up or down, no matter what time of year, it could be the subtropical jet, it could be the winter jet, it essentially drives storms.
Okay.
So you think about when the jet stream looks all loopy across the country, or you're in that block pattern, it's essentially driving where the storms are going. Similar to during hurricane season, when we talk about how the trade winds are kind of pushing the storms toward us.
Right.
Storms, no matter what they are, need something to drive them. If there's not some system pushing them and telling them where to go, they'll just sit.
Okay.
And won't move anywhere. And that's actually the worst situation to be in. So we'd rather these at least be moving, even though they're kind of moving slowly. So as with this drive continues to kind of drive storms into the area, we'll see off and on rain for the rest of tonight, a few isolated lightning strikes certainly possible, and then we get essentially drier every single day. So Tuesday, lesser storm potential than today, or rain potential, and then Wednesday is the least. By Thursday and Friday, we're kind of shifting that pattern back into a more summer-like mugginess. So the moisture will be around. It will just be more so feeling humid rather than worried about the storms. So here's a look at radar right now. If you look at where the storms are at this time, heaviest rain really moving through southern Burke and Caldwell County right now, as Colin mentioned. These are pushing in from the south toward the north. And so we're tracking heavy rain over a few isolated areas. And while it's not necessarily moving at a creep and crawl, it's definitely not moving fast. So these areas in Burke County, Caldwell County, Ashwaubenon, and Avery have already seen a lot of rain. Our two centered spots really have been the mountains, foothills, and then the sandhills and areas southeast. So really specifically Richmond County, where Rockingham is. So it's kind of those split areas. So as this really continues to move slowly, you can see that we have that flash flood warning in effect. That is saying that there's a higher than normal risk of seeing isolated flash flooding. It's not an emergency at this point. That would be kind of the step above what we're seeing right now. And we're not at that point yet, but we are just wanting to monitor this, because what happens is you have a day like this, and while it's very beneficial for the drought, it can kind of set the stage for more flooding potential Tuesday and Wednesday, but not for everyone. So based on the rain we've had so far today, if we had a downpour in Charlotte and Uptown tomorrow, I'm not really worried, other than the fact that drainage can be a bit bad in spots. I'm not really worried. But if you had that same exact downpour in Jonas Ridge, a little bit more concerning, just based on the fact that those areas have seen so much rain. So while we track rain the same, there will be areas, especially tomorrow, that we're eyeing a little bit closer. Now, further southwest, again, kind of along that same outer band pattern, you can see this area of heavy rain near Greenwood and McCormick. As that swings upward, it's going to move into our area at some point. Based on its current trajectory, my guess would be eventually going into Union, South Carolina, and then into parts of York County. Still has some time to go, but we will still see rain overnight. Notice that cluster, though, it has storms. Those little plus signs and then the little lightning marks, those are positive and negative lightning charges. So that is storm activity. It will likely keep some of its storm activity once it gets here, but it will lose its fuel a little bit as it moves into an area of slightly more stable air. So I think certainly we'll see lightning and thunder with that, but it just won't be severe, at least not at this point. We'll still continue to watch the upstate. That's pretty much where the storms are the worst right now. All these little green areas, little squiggles you can see, those are all flash flood warnings. So you can really see where the center of the worst of this has been. And again, those are going to swing eventually into our area. And if you look at the green, that's kind of over parts of York County, what looks like a little bit of light, like a light consistent rain. That's that ground clutter. I know we talk about this a lot. It's when there's a temperature inversion. Wider view, there's where that spin is. So you can kind of see that really the heaviest rain is still over on the east coast of the Carolinas. If that was even 20 miles to the west, we would have had a ton more rain on top of what we even had today. Lesser storms, but a ton of rain. So you can actually see the little dry slot right now if you look over toward South Carolina, if you look really close to your screen. So parts of the PD and over toward Myrtle Beach is kind of dealing with that dry slot. Let's talk how much rain we've had so far. Estimated rainfall totals in the mountains. Most spots have seen about 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain. However, notorious radar estimates are terrible at estimating higher elevations, because think of the radar beam, it's like this. So we talk a lot about how if the radar beam is too far away or something and it goes like this, it can miss storms happening here. It's the same thing if it's hitting the mountaintops and missing something up here. So it can essentially downplay the rain that it's had so far. So when you look at these totals, I just want you to kind of take that with a grain of salt, because I do have some totals that we've had from our rain gauges. So Southern Chesterfield County, Richmond County, a few of these isolated spots in the yellow and orange, about 2.5 to 3.5 inches. 4 or more is kind of the exception, the exception, not the rule.
Okay.
But everyone has seen something, and that's what we wanted because we're still under drought conditions. So we wanted everyone to at least see something. Again, up in the mountains, those little pockets there of yellow, about 2.5 to 3 inches of rain, but higher totals for higher elevation spots. Most of the Piedmont, it's been about an inch or so. We'll still continue to see those isolated showers heading into the overnight hours, but I think a bigger story, again, is going to be the fact that the rain and storm activity will continue just on a much lesser scale. So I'm going to pull up Futurecast for you really quick. So here's right now. We progress for about 3 o'clock in the morning. You can still see things are scattered, but notice after that, there's that drier air. You can see some sunshine even mixes in, but we will still see, you can kind of see that spin coming in from the south and west and pushing north and east. We'll still see a few isolated pockets there of storm activity. So tomorrow, while things are more isolated, I think we'll have a better chance of just some rumbles of thunder and some storms. And then Wednesday, same thing. Once we get past Wednesday, we're shifting into that drier pattern. It's just going to be more warm and humid. Here's the Futurecast rainfall for the next 48 hours. So this is on top of what we've already seen. Again, you can see the totals are not a lot, but it is going to be something. So we'll just have to watch those isolated spots. I want to pull up really quick some of the drought conditions because Brad and I were looking at this in the show and I thought this was interesting.
Yeah.
So in order to take care of our drought completely, we would need right now within a month about 4.5 to 6 inches of rain. Definitely doable. We'd probably need another day like this to get there. But in 3 months, the number actually went up about 13 to 14.5. So what that tells us is that based on our current drought conditions, we only need 1 day, maybe 1.5 days of where we are right now to cure it in a month. But long range, we would need almost 15 inches. So that just kind of goes to show the scale of how dry we've been so far this year and how we'd probably need 2, 3, maybe even 4 days similar to today to curb that completely. This is specifically in the Charlotte metro. So this does not necessarily include the mountains. The drought data is done by state. So it's as a whole. Now, with that being said, what that's telling us is that we typically do not see the rainiest summer months of the year until about July, August, September. So this would be something we're especially watching toward the end of May, June, maybe even early July. So it's a near-term benefit for a long-term concern that exists because I think a lot of times what happens is we think in short term and our viewers will say, oh, well, we had a lot of rain. It looks like the drought conditions are improving. They absolutely will after today.
Right.
In fact, the data is collected on Tuesdays. So Thursday's update will include the rain that what we had today. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be over. You've probably heard Brad say this a million times over the last 20 plus years he's been here, and it's something I've learned from him, but it's true. You don't develop a drought in a day, but you also can't take care of it in a day. Because even if you saw all 13 inches you needed, that's going to cause a flood. Even if you saw all 4 inches you needed, eventually tomorrow is going to come, and if it's drier, then drought conditions can, quickly pick back up. So I just want people to kind of just be aware of the fact that 1 day doesn't take care of things completely, but it is at least a step in the positive direction. Drought conditions have improved on the east coast of North and South Carolina over toward Raleigh, as well as over on the western side, so west of Asheville, but we're still under moderate drought conditions, which is essentially a level 2 out of 5. So we're nowhere near, water restrictions or anything like that, but it's just something that we monitor closely, especially heading into the rainy season, because while we don't want to be in a drought, we also don't want to be in a significant surplus. There's a reason why we love averages, so.
That makes sense. Yeah, you don't want it all in a day. You can hopefully get it over a month period. Obviously, as you said, as we get into June, July, and August, sometimes the rain is hard to get. So my last thing would be, I've seen some alarmists, I know you guys aren't in that category, on social media talking about how sometimes the jet stream can bring severe weather potential. Is that true? And I know, like you said, the rain chances are going down as we go towards the weekend, but with the setup that we have, does it lend itself to potentially having not necessarily severe weather here, but other places in the southeast?
So the jet stream can certainly pick up potential severe weather because it is essentially something that drives storms, but just the same way that you would think about like a classic severe low wind severe chance on like a summer day, so can that. It can be driven by a million different things. It can be driven by a strong cold front coming in. It can be driven by a large area of low pressure that's developing along the jet stream. I think the only thing that the jet stream does is maybe slightly enhance a storm pattern, and also it determines where the storm is moving. So the jet stream is not like some like magical fairy, that like comes in and says, boing, all of a sudden you're going to now see a higher risk for severe weather.
Right.
It's something that, yes, because it can bring in moisture, can slightly enhance things, but it's not saying like, okay, well, because this is happening, we're all of a sudden going to see storms over the Carolinas. It drives where it's going. And because of that southwesterly wind associated with this particular jet stream, yes, you could see that.
Okay.
But during the winter, when we have a strong jet stream that dips south, that's when we get into those colder and drier patterns. So then we don't see snow. So it depends on which jet stream it is, which time of year it is. And I know we say this all the time, especially when we're talking in the studio, Colin, but like every storm is different. Every jet stream is different, is going to make a low pressure system act differently. So we just can never really treat anything the same, if that makes sense.
And we're in La Nina conditions, right?
Yeah, so right now we are in what we call weak La Nina conditions.
Okay.
Long range climate models look like we're going to be in a neutral pattern, which is called La Nada, heading into hurricane season. Now,
that's a good thing, right?
So, yes and no.
Okay.
So El Nino and La Nina conditions, one is classically worse for hurricanes in the sense of how many more storms we have, and the other can mean lesser storms.
Right.
But think back to 1992, and I'm not trying to get in the weeds here, but Hurricane Andrew was one of 7 storms we had total for the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused a Category 5 hurricane making landfall in Miami and changed the building codes across the state of Florida forever.
Right.
Versus 2010, we had a very active year with, I think it was about 17 named storms, and none came to the United States.
Wow.
So it's a good year, right? Even if you had the average number of tropical systems. So every year, no matter whether we're in an El Nino or a La Nina, we still look for the same things.
Okay.
We just know overall that things might be less or more active just based on the atmospheric conditions. Where La Nada is a little bit, and there's still a chance it could change. We're still I guess we're only a few weeks away now from hurricane season, but things can still change as we get further into the season.
Okay.
Where La Nada is tricky is that essentially it's saying we're not enhancing the chance, for more hurricanes by weaker or more wind shear, but we're also not saying that they're not going to be. It's like it's a neutral pattern, it's 50-50 essentially. So it's like, okay, what I guess some people would call an average year. It's not really average, it's just based on overall.
Gotcha.
But some of the strongest hurricanes have happened during a La Nada, because I think we sometimes hone in, and I'm saying myself included, it's something I try to work on. We hone in sometimes too much on like what the overall pattern is. I think it's important to look at for the hurricane forecast of like, could we have more, could we have less storms? But we also just sometimes I think get too in the weeds with that. And we have to remember that it only takes one storm to make a bad season.
Okay.
If we had 40 named storms this season, but we had another Helene, we'd consider that a bad season.
That'd be a bad year.
You had another Katrina, you'd consider that a bad season.
Right.
You had another Ian, you'd consider that a bad season.
Right.
So it's important to know for the pattern to see if we had more storms or less storms, but regardless of what happens, we will track every storm the same with the goal to keep you guys safe.
Yeah.
I did want to show you this really quick with the severe weather risk. So this is today. So the severe weather risk is south of us, and then this is Tuesday, and then this is Wednesday. So there's no severe weather risk, at least in the Carolinas, that's associated with this jet stream in the near term. The next time that something would be trying to brew would be over in the central part of the country. And at this point, that looks like it would not be coming to us this weekend.
Beautiful.
Will it be hot and humid, though, with a small chance of storms? Yes.
Yes.
But that's what happens when it's in the upper
Well, we
80s.
can handle that. And it's not going to be as hot as it's going to be for the summer. So might as well get used to it now.
Yeah, you can bank on that one. I can tell you that forecast with
Trust
100%
me.
certainty.
I'm still not used to the heat and humidity here. I don't think you ever get used to it. I think you just got to get through it. So it's like that Florida weather, right? You just kind of got to get through.
Yeah.
Um,
Growing up, thankfully, in Georgia,
You're accustomed to it.
Well, so I miss,
Well, good for
honestly,
you.
moving back here from Florida, I missed having seasons.
Yeah.
But it definitely does not make it easier when things get hot and humid again. It's
Yeah.
like, I have naturally curly hair, as you've seen me, with my hair looking crazy.
Right,
But so I know it's that time of year when I have to go get my, my straightening treatment on my hair. I got to get that humidity taken care of for the next 3 months. But
Yep.
then we have the benefit of drier air into the fall, and the
That's right.
winters are not too bad.
No,
right,
they're not.
Mr. Ohio man.
Yeah, well, compared to where other places are in the country, this place is beautiful in the wintertime. So awesome. All right, Brittany, I'll let you go. I know you guys get ready for the 11 o'clock show. We appreciate you and Brad stopping by throughout the last 2 hours, and if not longer. They've been here earlier than that, and really our entire team of meteorologists. When days like this happen, everybody is on call throughout the entire day. So we appreciate your work. and your time to make sure that everyone out there that is listening and that hopefully will listen to this is safe. So thank you, Brittany.
Yes, no problem.
All right, we'll see Brittany at 11 and Brad as well. Let's go back to the president speaking about his executive order on prescription drug prices.
They're not American soldiers. They're from Russia. They're from Ukraine, but they're people. They're human souls, and they're being killed at levels that we haven't seen since the Second World War. And it's every week. A lot of drone fighting. It's a whole new form of warfare, and it's violent and vicious. And so that's it. I'd like to go back to China just for a second. They're very heavy on the fentanyl. We're charging them, as you know, 20% for the fact that they send fentanyl into our country. And they've agreed that they're going to stop that. And, you know, they'll be rewarded by not having to pay, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. So the fentanyl should stop. It comes from China. It's amazing. And comes through our southern border, comes through our northern border too, comes through Canada, and comes through our southern border, much more through the southern border. But so that's a very important subject to me, because everybody in this room has lost friends or people that have family members that have died of fentanyl. So there's a big incentive for China to stop, and I take them at their word. They're going to work on that, I think, very hard. And one thing, when they work on something, they get it done. So now I'm about to depart on a historic visit. Some of you are going with us to, as I said, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and United Arab Emirates. Before I do, I'll sign one of the most consequential executive orders in our country's history. I don't think there's ever been anything signed like this, certainly not with respect to health care, nothing even close. I'm delighted to be joined on this occasion by Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., who is doing a really good job, I have to tell you that. CMS Administrator, a friend of mine, Dr. Mehmet Oz, who is an amazing guy. You know, I was telling Bobby before, Oz had a very successful show, but it hurt his reputation. Because when you're in show business, it hurts your reputation a little bit. It's good for you, but in terms of professionalism and being a doctor, it sort of hurts your reputation. This guy went to the best schools, was the best, I mean, top of the line. Then he did a television show, became a success, made a lot of money, all that stuff, but it sort of hurt him. And you know who I compare that to? I hate to say this, but a special woman, Jeanine Pirro. She was the toughest, smartest DA, maybe in our countries, in our cities and states history, New York. She was really tough, really sharp. Then she did a show, and people didn't think of her quite the same way. She became more of an entertainment person, like Oz. Oz is not an entertainer. He's not really an entertainer, if you know the real story. And she isn't either. She is unbelievable. She was one of the strongest district attorneys in the history of New York, highly respected, very tough, went after the drug dealers at a level that you don't see today anymore. And hopefully she's given up a tremendous, she's leaving the #1 show on cable television, one of the #1 shows on television, period, The Five, but they've got great people left behind, but she was a big part of it. And so I equated to that. Jeanine Pirro is unbelievable. FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty McCary, with a reputation that's second to none, and the job he's doing already has been fantastic. Thank you, Marty. And Director of National Institute of Health, Jay Bhattacharya, who has been, as you know, from Stanford, so highly regarded, and have all been working with us very hard on this. And the question they would ask, being a little bit new to the government aspect of it, is why doesn't somebody fight the drug price situation, meaning equalization? There's a term, it's called equalization. Nobody wants to mention that term. And I'm not knocking the drug companies. I'm really more knocking the countries than the drug companies, because they're forced to do things. But the drug lobby is the strongest lobby in this country, they say, the drug lobby. It's between that and lawyers, and they have a lot of power. But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care. Countries where they paid a small fraction of what, for the same drug, that what we pay many, many times more for, and will no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma. But again, it was really the countries that forced Big Pharma to do things that, frankly, I'm not sure they really felt comfortable doing, but they've gotten away with it, these countries. European Union has been brutal, brutal. And the drug companies actually told me stories. It was just brutal how they forced them. And European Union suing all our companies, Apple, Google, Meta, they're suing all of our companies. They end up, they have judges that are European Union-centric, and they get rewarded 15 billion, 17 billion, 20 billion, and they use that to run their operation. Not going to happen any longer, that I can tell you. So what's been happening is we've been subsidizing other countries throughout the world, not just in Europe, throughout the world. European Union was the most difficult from what I understand. I mean, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called me up and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy, very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on? He said, so I checked, and it's the same box, made in the same plant, by the same company. It's the identical pill that I buy in New York, and here I'm paying $88 in London. In New York, I'm paying $1,300. Now, this is a great businessman, but he's not familiar with this crazy situation that we have. But he was stunned. But it was just one of those stories. And I brought it up with the drug companies, represented by somebody who's very, very smart, good person, too. And we argued about it for about half hour, and then finally he just said, because they can't justify it, he just said, look, you got me. You got me. I can no longer they've been justifying this crap for years. They said, oh, it's research and development. Well, I said, well, research and development, other countries should pay research and development too. It's for their benefit. It was just one of those things. And the other countries would set a price, and they'd meet the price, and they'd say, if you don't meet the price, you can't sell it in our country. I said, well, then you walk away, and, you know, they'll call you back, and they'll sell it in the country. But now they'll have to do that. So for the first time in many years, we'll slash the cost of prescription drugs, and we will bring fairness to America. Drug prices will come down by much more, really, if you think, 59. If you think of a drug that is sometimes 10 times more expensive, it's much more than the 59%. You know, it depends on the way you want to analyze it, but in one way you could analyze it that way. But between 59 and 80, and I guess even 90%. So when I worked so hard in the first term, and if I got prices down, remember I was the only one to ever get prices down for a full year, but I'd get them down like 2%, and I thought it was like a big deal. Well, we're getting them down 60, 70, 80, 90%, but actually more than that if you think about it in the way mathematically. And Pharma has to say, we're sorry, but we'll not be able to do this any longer to these countries that have been so tough. They've been very tough, nasty. It's trade. It's trade. And Pharma is also very powerful. And the Democrats have protected Pharma. The Democrats, this is the Democrats have protected Pharma. These are the Democrats. And by the way, I just called the Speaker of the House, and I just called the leader, our leader in the Senate, John Thune, Mike Johnson. Spoke to both of them. I said, when you score, you're going to have to score two things. You're going to have to, number one, score that Hundreds of billions of dollars of tariff money is coming in. But even bigger than that, you're going to have to score that your costs for Medicaid and Medicare and just basically pharmaceuticals and drugs is going down at a level that nobody has ever seen before. It'll pay for the Golden Dome. I see the Golden Dome is there, see? That'll easily pay for the Golden Dome. And we'll have a lot of money left over. We need the Golden Dome, by the way, in this world. Although this world's a lot safer today than it was a week ago, and a lot safer than it was 6 months ago. We had people that had no clue what they were doing. So today Americans spend 70% more for prescription drugs than we spent in the year 2000. Think of that. Our country has the highest drug prices anywhere in the world by sometimes a factor of 5, 6, 7, 8 times. It's not like they're slightly higher. They're 6, 7, 8 times. There are even cases of 10 times higher. So that you go 10 times more expensive for the same drug, that's big numbers. Even though the United States is home to only 4% of the world's population, pharmaceutical companies make more than 2/3 of their profits in America. So think of that. With 4% of the population, the pharmaceutical companies make most of their money, most of their profits from America. That's not a good thing. Now, I think, by the way, I have great respect for these companies and for the people that run them. I really do. And I think they did one of the greatest jobs in history for their company, convincing people for many years that this was a fair system. And nobody really understood why, but I figured it out. For years, pharmaceutical and drug companies have said that research and development costs were what they are, and for no reason whatsoever. They had to be borne by America alone. Not anymore, they don't. This means American patients were effectively subsidizing socialist healthcare systems in Germany, in all parts of the European Union. They were the toughest of all. They were nasty. And I see that. I see that with trade, too. European Union is in many ways nastier than China, okay? And we've just started with them. Oh, they'll come down a lot. You watch. We have all the cards. They treated us very unfairly. They sell us 13 million cars. We sell them none. They sell us their agricultural products. We sell them virtually none. They don't take our products. That gives us all the cards, and very unfair. So they're going to have to pay more for health care, and we're going to have to pay less. That's all it is. And believe it or not, you know, because it's really the world we're talking about, not just the European Union, but because it's the world, the numbers are for the healthcare company not as bad as you would think. They'll make the same. I think the healthcare companies should make pretty much the same money. I really don't believe they should be affected very much, because it's just a redistribution of wealth. It's a redistribution where it could be the same top line, but it's going to be distributed differently. Europe's going to have to pay a little bit more. The rest of the world's going to have to pay a little bit more, and America's going to pay a lot less. Again, because it's a much smaller population than when you think of the whole world. So basically what we're doing is equalizing. There's a new word that I came up with, which I think is probably the best word. We're going to equalize, where we're all going to pay the same. We're going to pay what Europe's going to pay. We're going to all pay. Now, there may be some countries in dire need, and I would be willing to sacrifice that, and help them. But it's called most favored nation. We are going to pay the lowest price there is in the world. We will get whoever is paying the lowest price. That's the price that we're going to get. So remember that. So we're no longer paying 10 times more than another country. Whoever is paying the lowest price, we will look at that price and we will say that's the price we're going to pay. Most favored nations. That's what it is. One breast cancer drug costs Americans over $16,000 per bottle, but the same drug from the same factory, manufactured by the same company, is 1/6 that price in Australia and 1/10 that price in Sweden. 1/10 for the identical product. A common asthma drug costs almost $500 here in America, but costs less than $40 in the United Kingdom. So $40 in the United Kingdom, which is where this gentleman told me he paid a small amount for his shot. But think of that. So $40 versus $500 here. That's not even bad. There are much worse examples. And the weight loss drug, Ozempic, costs 10 times more in the United States than in the rest of the developed world. 10 times more. Why? Why? What did we do? Suckers. But we never had a president that had the courage to do this. And nobody knew the system like I do. I mean, I've gotten to know this system so well. And I don't think it's fair that it benefits Obamacare. Obamacare is a failure. It's not a good health care. It works. I made it work. I had an obligation to make it work, or an obligation to let it die. I chose that we had to make it work. I had to make it as good as possible. And I had a choice. I could have let it fail or make it as good as possible. As good as possible means it was still not very good, but it survived. And we did the right thing. But this makes everything work. And I don't want to have a bad form of health care work because of the fact I was able to cut drug prices by 80 or 90%. So we're going to maybe come up with something. I think this gives the Republicans a chance to actually do a health care that's much better than Obamacare and for less money, which if you guys would work on that along with Congress. But I do want to say that Democrats could have done this a long time ago. They have fought like hell for the drug companies, and they knew they were doing the wrong thing. And it's going to be very hard. I was just telling the leader and the speaker that it's going to be very hard for the Democrats to vote against the one big, beautiful deal. The greatest tax cuts in history, greatest everything, but now you have the big drug prices because that's going to be included. It makes that whole situation different from a scoring standpoint. I just told them, I called them up about this. I said, I'm going to do something that's going to be very monumental, and you're going to be scoring. You better tell your people that this is going to score really well, and then add hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs to your list also. But as big as the tariffs are, this is something that really hits quickly. 5 years ago, I signed an executive order to confront this disaster, but only confront it in a minor way. It was a good confrontation, but never to this extent. It took people a little while to understand a very complicated system. But Joe Biden, without any knowledge of what he was doing, terminated the policy and then pretended to negotiate under a new system. And then you take a look, 5 out of the 10 drugs that he negotiated are now over 200% more expensive in America than the rest of the world, and far more expensive than when he even got involved. Much more expensive than when he got involved. Joe Biden's plan was as you know, because you wrote about it, you don't say it very loudly, but it was a very big failure, was his whole presidency. First, I'm directing the U.S. Trade Representatives and Department of Commerce to begin investigations into foreign nations that extort drug companies by blocking their products unless they accept bottom line and very low dollar amounts for their product, unfairly shifting the cost burden onto American patients. And we'll be taking a look at that very strongly. The biggest thing we're going to do is we're going to tell those countries, like those represented by the European Union, that, that game is up, sorry. And if they want to get cute, then they don't have to sell cars into the United States anymore. It's a very big subject. And they won't get cute, because I'll defend the drug companies from that standpoint. They were given a price by the European unions and other countries. This is what you do. This is what we're going to pay.
My goodness, guys, we've got some stunning images from Baltimore, Maryland right now. We checked in this fire about, Jeb, about an hour and a half ago. We just had smoke billowing, but now, as you can see flames as far back as they continue to push this lens right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of your picture right here. This is a 6-alarm fire now. It's a multi-store warehouse in West Baltimore, and they're saying now, WBAL, who's on the scene, they've got 200 firefighters on this. Now, if you remember, we had a 4-alarm fire about a year and a half ago here in Charlotte, and there were close to the same amount of type of response. I'm not exactly sure how many firefighters at that time. It kind of goes away from my memory, but 200 firefighters. That is unreal on this 6-alarm fire here in West Baltimore. Now, this fire broke out earlier today, but it reignited after 7 p.m. The Baltimore City fireman says the fire is in a multi-story mattress warehouse, and this is ongoing right now. Now, this looks to be potentially different fire than what we had earlier. I need to see a little bit more information here, but this is around 9:40. They're saying this is still a very active situation. You can see almost, man, look at all those cruisers and lights, fire lights as well. We're saying that one side of the warehouse backs up to Amtrak tracks, and they're working with Amtrak right now to get the overhead lines de-energized. The fire is not under control. And the building stores a large number of mattresses, so this could be a real issue. They're worried about this spreading as well. It looks like there are reports of, pull this up, explosions in the area. Yeah, explosions heard as this large warehouse burns the intersection of North Bentaloo Street and Edmondson Avenue. This is in West Baltimore right now. So I want to pull some more information, and we stick with this. It seems like they're doing route diversions all across West Baltimore right now. And this was a 4-alarm fire at one point, but now a 6-alarm fire. This is around 8:30. I'm seeing that this was reported as a 4-alarm fire. So there's been no injuries reported in this one. But I do believe we had another fire earlier on.
Just moments ago.
Right. Where 2 Baltimore firefighters were injured battling a different blaze in downtown. Now, this one...
Wow, look at those flames. That's crazy.
My goodness. I don't think this is the wildfire or the fire from earlier.
It looks like there were 2 separate massive fires just
in the same city
apart in Baltimore.
My goodness.
Wow.
I mean, a coincidence? I don't think so. That's just too weird.
It's very strange. But the other one was really big.
It was.
We had it here on Live Impact News. It was a very large fire. They had just put it out.
Right. And that one, there was 2 Baltimore firefighters that were injured battling that fire. That building fire was at West Saratoga Street near Park Avenue. And there was 1 firefighter in critical condition in response to that fire. So you're right. This is a totally different situation happening right now at the same time. I don't see an update on that other fire, but this is the 6-alarm fire that we are getting right now. And I'm going to try to pull up some more information from WBAL here. So crews have been on scene. It's a multi-story warehouse. Man, they've had a busy day here in Baltimore.
That's unreal.
So this, again, this is at the 600 block of Bentaloo Street. And it looks like they are trying to position themselves, reading from this article, in better position so that they can try and fight this fire. They're in a defensive stance now. In terms of trying to attack this, they're not doing that right now, trying to take a defensive stance to try and control this blaze. And again, this is where Amtrak tracks are. This warehouse that's on fire backs up to the Amtrak tracks. So they're working with Amtrak to try and get the overhead lines de-energized, which is potentially why we've seen such big flames because of this. But train service between Wilmington and Washington, D.C. is stopped right now. That's going to be big, and that could potentially have some ripple effects.
Absolutely.
A lot of people take the train to and from Washington and, of course, Wilmington. They're having some water pressure issues as well, which is obviously combating this fire is not helping them. And they have a residential area as well, it seems, on the other side of this building. So there are a lot of water mains there, but again, it's not helping in terms of the water pressure in fighting the fire. It seems like multiple agencies are on scene, including Baltimore Fire as well. So there's diversions in place in terms of folks getting around downtown. And it seems like you can see from the left side of our photo there, not seeing any traffic, but you're just seeing just like a line of flashing lights there. So that could potentially be where they're stopping traffic. But this situation is active. And this 6-alarm fire, this blaze is, man, this is quite ridiculous to see on WCNC Plus right now, bringing this to you in real time, developing news here on Baltimore, in Baltimore, Maryland. Again, this 6-alarm fire. This is a multi-story mattress warehouse, they're saying. So this is why you're seeing such an intense fire at this point right now, this very active investigation. It seems like 200 firefighters are on scene right now. I'm going to pull up some other information.
Yeah, here while you're doing that, I'm reading now. It looks like first responders say the initial call. So I want to preface by saying this has not been confirmed. This has not been confirmed. But first responders, are saying the initial call included a note about a car driving into the building, possibly being the cause of the fire. Again, they still don't know. They're investigating. They're working on putting the fire out before they determine what caused it. But that's what they're saying could have been the cause.
Yeah, and residents are being asked to stay away from this situation. The Baltimore Sun, which is the paper there, saying that the 6-alarm fire has been going on since, right around 7 o'clock. And it sounds like the department is getting ready to try and relocate some residents in the area. Seems like this fire could jump its parameters right now where it is in the building. They're saying more than over 100 different firefighters. One place saying there could be 200, as many as 200 firefighters battling this. So this is a 6-alarm fire. We will continue to monitor this situation here on WCNC Plus, though we are nearing the 10 o'clock hour, and we'll be going off the air here on WCNC Plus very briefly, but we'll be back with you at 11 o'clock for our linear show. Brad